What's up? What's up? Hello everyone. We are back. Finally. अब हम लोग ओ अच्छा कैमरा ऑफ है क्या? सॉरी सॉरी माय बैड. ओ लाइट भी ऑफ है क्या? तेनू मैं एकदम काम चालू था. यो 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 हेलो 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 गाइस. डॉडरबैक वर्सेस अली रजा चालू है अभी. दिस इज गेम नंबर 3. 2 ड्रॉ गए ना अभी तक. तो जहां तक मैंने देखा 2 ड्रॉ गए हैं अभी तक मैचेस. बहुत ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग हो चुका है. मैं अपने फेस कैम एंड ऑल को थोड़ा सेट कर लेता हूँ आप लोग के हिसाब से. ठीक है, सो दैट आपको बेटर दिखे सब कुछ. देयर यू गो. वेयर इज द मास्टर लोगो. यहाँ पर बेस्ट है. ये हमारा सब्सक्राइबर. अरे मैं कैसे हो सब लोग गाइस. हमारा मैच टाइमिंग को टाइम है अभी. आर मैच इज एट 7:30 एंड 7:30. लेकिन मेरे को लग रहा है थोड़ा सा आगे बढ़ेगा. मेरे को लग रहा है थोड़ा आगे जाएगा. सॉरी थोड़ा सा लेट हो गया मैं. बट हियर वी आर. जरा oh sound.
So trading queens likely, but he's saying he's going to do it on his own terms. If the queens disappear,
Navi
the white
versus
starts where bishop will
Falcons.
jump out with gain of time. Very interesting. It looks like a pawn sacrifice, but it is opening up white's light squared bishop on the longest diagonal. Very much in the balance here.
Would you rather be white or black here?
Normally I take the bishops, but I just have this spidey sense tingling that the knights are going to be quite strong.
Spidey sense है बंदे पे
Especially that
बोलते
black knight on f5.
इतना डिले. हाँ मेरे को लग रहा है थोड़ा मैच डिले होगा बिकॉज इसके बाद एक और मैच है ना.
Short term knights.
It's a spidey sense tingling वाली चीज.
Surprised Nodebek went for that, but I'll still say black.
साथ में चल रहा है क्या अर्जुन का मैच?
I'm taking Ali Reza in this position.
अर्जुन का मैच थोड़ी ना चल रहा है.
With my bias towards the bishop pair.
क्या बोल रहे
हो? Of
हो?
course, it's a game for all 3 results. I think this is the best position that Nodebek has had.
अर्जुन का मैच थोड़ी ना चल रहा है साथ में.
That we can all agree on.
That's why I'm biased, I think, towards the black position. He's going to be loving it compared to what we saw.
एक ही मैच चल रहा है ना अभी.
True. I mean, if you think about the story of the match so far, it's for
साथ में है क्या? एक सेकंड. ओह स्ट्रीम बी.
I won't say that it's
ओह अर्जुन का भी मैच है. अच्छा इनका तो गेम 4 of 4 है. क्रेजी. Bro.
He's definitely indicating some intentions on the king side. He's saying, okay, castle king
Ian
side
versus
if you dare. So I wonder what
भाई दोनों का रेटिंग देख रहे हो. 2818 2819. ओ बाबा.
I like it. The purpose of it is you want to discourage
वो black
white from playing e4.
तो ये गेम 4 of 4 है. Ian is white.
And yes, black's e6 pawn is weak, but then white's d4 pawn will be weak. So Nepo probably isn't looking to play e4.
एक तो इन लोग का हार्ट रेट देख के हमारा हार्ट रेट चेंज हो जाता है भाई.
Maintaining flexibility. But seeing the way Arjun's playing this opening, he's playing very provocatively.
Very.
What does that tell me? If Nepo castles kingside, look for black to play g5.
Yep. That move it might happen even if he doesn't. But you know what? After that last move by Nepo, rook to c1.
Nepo बहुत पुराना प्लेयर है.
Ian
Nepo.
No longer castle on the queen side here. So either the king is staying in the middle or it
भाई कल वो देखा मैं मेरा दिमाग खराब हो गया भाई. वो बेचारा
A3 B4
कौन था वो?
C5 is another
Twisted Mind का जो player था.
Does feel like Nepo's in this kind of no man's land at the moment, Eric, because he doesn't want to castle. He sees the aggression from Arjun, but if you don't castle, you're also at risk in the center.
And that's the e5 move, played immediately. When the knight was on c3, e5 wasn't possible. There's too much pressure on d5. Now e5 is playable, and if you take on e5, you allow that knight on c6, it's taking on e5, hitting the queen, and the d file is opening up, and white's not ready yet for the whole middle to open up. He hasn't chosen to castle. Great response by Arjun.
Our match is with Magnus, yes buddy.
Without having that
NIHAL versus Magnus डालू क्या टाइटल में? रुको.
Arjun has been playing in that style.
टाइम के साथ डालता हूँ.
He's waiting to get a move like e5 in, a move like
नहीं
g5.
टाइम नहीं
And
डालता
in
हूँ.
this case, it is perfectly timed in the center. Eric, it's difficult to react to. Yes, you can play knight c5, but things are falling apart, and your king in the middle means that when the e pawn captures on d4, you have to watch out on the e file.
Not only that, when e takes d4, the e file opens up.
टाइटल में
and there's
मैंने
just a
अपडेट कर
long-term
दिया.
weakness on d4, an isolated pawn. Yes, white has the bishop pair, but
1 hour to go.
black seems to be very active and very happy.
बहुत
despite
interesting
that.
होगा.
Arjun playing aggressively, finding the right moves. Nepo has slowed down. As I said, not every player is like this, but when Jan starts slowing down, there's a couple options. Maybe he's looking for the kill, or he's uncomfortable. In this case, he's uncomfortable. He just had an opening advantage, and it's completely.
Guys यार बहुत hectic चल रहा है मालूम है.
Your best piece, that bishop on g2. That's not a good thing.
And knight c3 here is the move that makes the most sense. But you know what could happen, Eric? Knight c3, rook back to d7. If you take on e5, which looks like one of the only moves, the knight recaptures, and immediately knight d3 is a huge problem because knight d3 also comes with potentially knight takes on f2 afterwards.
Yeah, look at white's dark squared bishop. Black also has one, and black has their pawns on light squares. Feels like black is better suited for light square play right now. And what's the compensation? You're playing white, you're supposed to play for advantage. To me, black is comfortably equalized, and the play will revolve around the d file. King e2 is a good move. I don't see a great response margin here that will really press white. But at the end of the day, we're not talking about an advantage for Nepo anymore. It's how he can stabilize and catch up in development and equalize again.
Exactly.
When you have Nepo on the back foot, you're doing well. Arjun is doing well right now.
Yeah, bishop f6. We have, you know, pawns on light squares, h5, f5 for Arjun. And all those dark square pawns on the king side, it's tough to advance them at the moment. We're probably going to see moves like, of course, rook to d1. But, you know, with knight d3 still there, I think he was concerned. So he plays rook c2. Maybe if knight c4, he can drop the bishop back to c1. And for now, knight d3 is not as impactful. It's still a great move, but
वॉच पार्टी काके घर चले जाओगे या फिर मोबा का भी रैंक पुश हो जाए, क्या कहते हो रुद्र? कोई रैंक पुश नहीं होगा, कुछ नहीं होगा. ये वॉच पार्टी खत्म होते ही I guess I'm not gonna sleep tonight because tomorrow is very important. हमारा shoot है कल.
Isn't too far away from completing development.
Yep.
That rook on h1 needs to join the game.
Oh,
Is
bhai.
white active? No, but he can't ask for everything. Just needs to get that rook into the game and watch out for any threats from Arjun. What would a threat be? Maybe knight b4. Maybe knight b4 and a2 is loose in some lines. Nepo plays knight a4, covering the b4 square. Maybe in the future I'm going to swing my rook from h1 to b1, but there's a threat. Once again, knight takes f2. After you double the rooks, there's a knight takes f2 on the board right now. How will Nepo respond?
And playing a move like rook d1 also
मैं सच बताऊं honestly speaking, ठीक है, मैं जब कास्टिंग सुनता हूँ ना, वो a4 b4 m4 d4 g4 भाई मैं बहुत कंफ्यूज हो जाता हूँ. पता नहीं क्यों. Like I am not used to chess casting at all. धीरे धीरे होगा मेरे को जब मैं खुद गेम को और तेजी से समझना शुरू करूंगा. So वैसा सीन है. Switch the board. I'm not watching this on chess.com. I'm watching this on क्या बोलते हैं? I'm watching this in. It's easy. I know it's easy for people who already know. मेरे को पता है लेकिन fast नहीं समझ आता है भाई. तो मैं खुद ही c3 पर लेकर आया. Actually इसका कास्टिंग का जरूरत है क्या आप लोग को? ये बताओ मेरे को. तो इसको मैं म्यूट ही कर देता हूँ. सबसे बेस्ट. इसका कास्टिंग का जरूरत नहीं है तो मैं इसको म्यूट ही कर देता हूँ. मेरे को तो नहीं जरूरत है कास्टिंग का. मैं तो ईयरफोन भी निकाल चुका हूँ. इजी तो है. हाँ मैं सुन नहीं रहा हूँ, आप लोग सुनो. नो रहने दो. नो डोंट म्यूट. ले हो गया. लड़ाई हो गई चैट में. लड़ाई हो गई. हिंदी नॉट अलाउड. हिंदी अगर आपको देखना है तो सोनी लिव पे जाइए भाई. बंटू गेमिंग कैसे हैं? मॉडल विल डू कास्टिंग. हाँ मैं करूंगा ना कास्टिंग. मेरे को आप देखो ना ब्लंडर करते हुए कास्टिंग में. मेरे को देखो ना प्लीज. मैं करता हूँ. मेरे को फोकस भी होगा ना फिर. ठीक है. हाँ तो यहाँ पर आप देख सकते हैं. देखो गाइस मैं आपको समझा रहा हूँ. d3 पर जो नाइट है ना ब्लैक का, उसको किंग हमारा नहीं मार सकता है. क्यों नहीं मार सकता है? क्योंकि वो चेक के पोजीशन पर है, इसीलिए है. डबल धमाल. जीएम मॉडल. बहुत फास्ट बोलते रहे वो लोग. इसने इसलिए ये किया क्योंकि ये होने वाला है, ये वो सोच रहा है. अल्लाह मैं नहीं सोच सकता भाई, इतना फास्ट वो कैसे सोच रहा है. गाइस बाय द वे स्ट्रीम को लाइक करिए. जितने भी लोग देख रहे हैं जल्दी से 10,000 लाइक के बहुत करीब है हम लोग. यान के तरफ निहाल का मैच कैसे हुआ? निहाल का मैच 7:30 को है दोस्त. मालूम है मेरे को. ब्लैक हमारी टीम है. हमारी टीम एज इन द प्लेयर हु इज इंडियन, अर्जुन एरेगेसी. प्रेडिक्ट द मूव्स. ओके ठीक है, प्रेडिक्ट करते आओ गाइस मिलके. अभी तो यान का चांस है ना. ओ हुर्रा 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 हुर्रा. ई का हुआ. इयान का भी फुल नेम पढ़ो. इयान इयान नेपोम्नियाची. सही बोला क्या मैंने? नेपोम्नियाची. इयान नेपोम्नियाची. ओ हैं. हाय बैगन. इयान नेपोम्नियाची. नॉट बैड, ऑलमोस्ट करेक्ट. ओके चलो ठीक है. नेपोटिज्म बोल रहा है. बाप रे. क्या करेंगे? ट्रेड भी ट्रेड करेंगे? नहीं यार, रुक रुक. क्या ये यान रुक ट्रेड करेगा भाई? एक्यूरेसी देखो अर्जुन का भाई 96% है और वो 90% पे यान. कौन कौन खेल रहा है भाई? नीचे नाम आप लोगों को दिख जाएगा भाई. सब लोग इसे नेपो बुलाते हैं. यस आई नो, नेपो. ही इज गेटिंग कंफ्यूज्ड और व्हाट. what if गाइज ये अपने रूक को D2 पर लेकर जाए. चल नहीं रहा है क्या उसका पीसी? चल नहीं रहा है? ऐसा कुछ हुआ क्या? what if वो अपने रूक को D2 पर लेकर जाए? नहीं लेकर जा सकता गाइज. क्या बोल रहे हो आप लोग यार? नो 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 नो, नहीं लेकर जा सकता उसको. अगर नहीं जा सकता है, मालूम है मेरे को गाइस. मैं आप लोग को टेस्ट कर रहा था. फंस गया रे. नेपो भाई फंस गए, पूरा फंस गए. डेंजर वाला फंस गए. किंग को मूव करना पड़ेगा मेरे को लग रहा है नेपो को. क्या हुआ? नेपो इज फ्रस्ट्रेटेड विजिबली. मोटर भाई महावतार नरसिम्हा देखने जाना है सिटी. साहिल सिंह प्रधान, थैंक यू ब्रो. मैं जाऊंगा मेरे को लग रहा है मोस्टली. ओके C1 पे लेके आया वो. ऊ लाला. वो चेकमेट हो सकता है क्या? ये क्या? वो अपने चेक ट्रेड हो गए. क्या हुआ? वाई इज ही फ्रस्ट्रेटेड? यान उसके पॉन्स को लेके जा रहा है. सोल एंथम शूट थगवा लिकवा. क्वीन को लेके आएगा क्या ये? बड़े चेक क्यों नहीं कर रहा है यान? लाइक ऊपर लेके जाके. अर्जुन गॉट हिम इन अ कॉर्नर. यप. Oh my god. Resign on incoming or what? And there you go. He walked off. Arjun Aragassi wins it. He comes back for a handshake. My goodness. Arjun Aragassi. क्या बात है, क्या बात है.
On to the semifinals with an incredible performance. Honestly, you know, out of those 4 games, he played better in the large majority of them. He kind of had that blip in game 3.
Black
Didn't
coffee.
like that game from him at all. An easy win for Nepomniachtchi, but he turned it right back around.
He turned it right back around, and Nepo is, you know, he's still thinking, how did that happen? I lost my games with White, and it comes down to one move in game 4. He played a lazy move. Arjun is such a sharp player. Punished him immediately, and we have one of our first semi-finalists.
Exactly right. Arjun Erigaisi, he is through.
Erigaisi.
Absolutely huge for Gen G.
बाप रे जेनजी के लिए बहुत बड़ा प्लस पॉइंट हो चुका है ये. Let's watch this
It
one.
wasn't a fist pump, it wasn't a
Hello?
celebration, it was a, oh, thank goodness I was able to do that, because
where
it
are
does feel a little bit like Abdusatorov is doing his best Houdini
it?
impression in all 3 of today's games. He was able, at least once in each game, to get back to equal from a position that could have been considered lost. But the score is now 2-1, which means there's only one game left in this quarterfinal unless it goes to Armageddon. And the only way it goes to Armageddon is if Nordebek wins on command right now.
एक बार
The worry
रेडिटर जी से
for
बात
me
कर
for
लूं.
Nordebek
आज
is
लाइफ
that he
में
didn't look too
मस्त
frustrated.
वाला
He kind of just looked like he accepted the
वो
fact that
चल
he
रहा
got
है.
flagged.
भाग
Like he
दौड़ चल रहा है
expected
मेरे.
it. It was self-inflicted.
तो
He could have
थोड़ा
pulled
सा
the
हम-
break way sooner, and he should have been able to find a way to give up his knight for that F-pawn, but he was too slow. It looked like he was a bit indecisive, and just not trusting his instincts enough there. Alireza using all the tricks in the book. Alireza's played tens of thousands of online bullet games, and all of those skills paid off there.
Just so impressive. I mean, for me, the most
अपना मैच
fascinating
7:30
thing to
बजेगा
watch
इस.
is how Alireza is behind on the clock.
Right.
But when it comes to that under 1 minute, how he completely becomes a different beast. And from there, he's the one who flagged Nordebek Abdusatorov. You know, I think in Alireza's mind, he just believes he's the better player here.
But also, there are some questions to be asked, right? Because if you're Abdusatorov, you're thinking, well, hang on a second. I get that I got flagged when, you know, it was maybe 10, 15 seconds ahead on the clock, but he was 2 minutes ahead at one point. We mustn't forget that. Is there something he could have done
ये
better?
मोटे
There's
है.
going to be questions he's going to be asking himself about how he avoids that happening again.
Yeah, and in the meantime, a decision made in terms of opening here. I love this decision from Nordebek in a must-win situation. He's grabbed a pawn short term. It looks like a queen's gambit accepted, just with colors reversed. And while the pawn will be regained, he's going to create 2 outside pass pawns of his own. Look at this, the white A and B pawns versus the black D and C pawns. Long term, there's a lot of potential here. Endgame's very favorable for white. He's created a lot of imbalance, and it's only just move 11. So a great start to this game for him in this quest to strike back. But he has to be quicker. He needs to apply pressure on the clock. You cannot get down to 1 minute versus 1 minute against Firouzja. It's just suicidal.
Yeah, he's made one thing clear. He's not going to go down into the night slow and silent in this one. Just the opening choice he has, right? The 2 connected passes that you're talking about on the left side of the board. But it's central control for Alireza Firouzja as well. It's going to be a very dynamic middle game. These kind of openings lend themselves to 2, not 3 results. Either white wins or black wins.
And a draw is the same as a loss, so ultimately a win-win scenario for Abdusatorov here. He puts his bishop on the longest diagonal, and yeah, I've actually studied these types of positions myself. They're just so irrational. Even with computers, it's hard to get to the truth, and that's rare in chess these days. Normally a computer will tell you, this side is better, that side's better, this is the plan, but here, it's very hard to find the correct moves.
So, in summary then, really, really good choice of opening from Nordebek in a must-win situation. Place yourself in a position where, frankly, there's not going to be any shuffling of pieces around with 30 seconds left to go. I've got 2 pass pawns and we're on move 13, right? There's going to be plenty of life in the position. Yes, he might lose, but also he's giving himself the maximum opportunity to win, and that's exactly what he has to do right now.
He doesn't have an option. Now, black doesn't have an option in one position. One plan that must be stopped at all costs is to make sure that white is never able to push that a4 pawn. The game sort of revolves around that. White develops pieces, places them in such a way that knight headed to b3 next to assist that a pawn to move forward. Firouzja's going to do everything under the sun to make sure that that doesn't happen.
And this is an element, like the opening choice, closing thought there. It's an element to chess that is unique to chess as an esport. You're never going to sit here commentating Dota or Counter-Strike or any other esport or StarCraft or anything where you say, right, we don't actually have to win here. There's none of that. We can be playing for the draw. We can tactically prevent our opponent from winning, and that can be good enough to get the match result. So it adds another layer to the strategy, another layer to the metagame, to the psychology of what these players have to go through on this stage.
And the beauty of this specific quarterfinal, this clash, is that neither player is just not in their blood to play for a draw. But yeah, definitely a new dynamic that is unique to chess and is often one of the hardest to master. I know so many young players who are sitting there like offering draws or playing a bit passively because they know it's enough, and just playing moves that you feel suit your style. That tends to be the best solution, no matter the type of scenario you find yourself in. In the meantime, White's queen improves itself. It feels like he's getting ready to centralize his other rooks, maybe strike in the center with a white pawn soon, and that would signal the next phase of the game where it's all about calculation.
And I think this kind of a position suits both these players. This is where they sort of thrive on, both Alireza and Nordebek, you know,
Right.
where it's extremely combative, energetic plays required by both of them. Queen c2 hinting at the e-pawn moving forward. We spoke about the plan for White trying to get a5 eventually. For Black, it's the other pawn it wants. You want to aim at pushing your pawns in the center of the board if you're Black here. e5 at some point in the air as well. It becomes a race. Flank versus the center.
And there's going to be a world where White has passed pawns on the A and B files, Black has passed pawns on the C and D files, and it becomes very, very dynamic, and you have to constantly calculate and count the number of moves to make sure that you're not losing by time as opposed to by position on the board if your opponent gets a queen first in the endgame, for example.
Okay, shall we have another prediction here, another vote? Last time you said bishops, Tanya, bishops versus knights. What would you take? Flank pawns or center pawns?
Oh.
That's a tough one. But you know, my record so far in the prediction game's gone pretty good today. Just a subtle reminder.
Yeah.
I'm taking the flank pawns in this one. You know, I want this match to go down to the wire. I want to see an Armageddon. I think that's the reason I'm taking the flank pawns. What about you guys?
I like the idea of the center pawns. It's still one big pawn chain there, and I feel like if this goes down to a time scramble, having two weaknesses on opposite sides of the board to defend, could end up coming back to bite White here. Assuming it goes to a time scramble, I think I'd rather Black's pawns.
And normally I'm very kind of classically trained. I'm very biased towards the center pawns, but I kind of want to see Armageddon as well. So I'm not going to say I favor either side's position, but I know what result would be fun.
You are such a
You can't dodge that. No, you can't dodge that.
You're
But,
such
you know,
a peacemaker, David. Unbelievable.
It's exactly how I feel. My mind says center pawns, but my heart says flank pawns. David, you got to make a pick.
I agree with Tanya. I've stuck my neck out on the line here. I don't mind burning and being wrong, but I need some decision.
I'll go center just because the flank pawns might drop. The flank pawns might be doomed. The last move from Black is ganging up on this A pawn with the rook, with the knight, and with the queen behind. This pawn might be falling, so he needs to do something quick, maybe in the center or on the other side of the board, Nordebek, to compensate for that pawn deficit he's about to incur.
It comes with some consequences, this last move. That knight has lost connection to the other knight, right? This is the moment that Alireza can think about the bishop and knight trade simply to destroy Nordebek's kingside pawns.
Yes, exactly.
And then try to target those weaknesses. Bishop takes knight, forcing Black to recapture with the pawn.
Yeah, and let's show this. The white queen might now slide up one square to attack that newly made doubled pawn on f6. Not just that, but the white A pawn threatening to move up the board. If Black takes a timeout and defends that pawn, say marches forward in the center or moves his king, then the white A pawn advances, and this spells disaster for Black. The knight will have to drop back, and the pawns will only continue to advance. We might see a scenario, however, if the black king doesn't defend the pawns and we see a rook capture. Now the white queen will jump in, and the black king feeling very airy. This looks precarious. The eval bar says level, but it's anything but dull, this position. That's good news for Nordebek. It feels like this is what he's forced to do in this position if he wants to go for the win.
So plenty of imbalances in the position. You're right, Tanya. There is the opportunity now, a golden opportunity to potentially introduce that extra imbalance into the game, taking that knight. And maybe that's what causing Nordebek giving a little bit of pause here. Are we going to see that happen on the board? It's also very committal. Once you do that, you're committed to that being your strategy for the rest of the game.
I just want to say, if that swap happens, and I think we're headed in that direction, pawn takes bishop has to be played. The queen does step up. We see the line being played out. F6 pawn. I think defending it is super dangerous. You know, we said this earlier. You cannot allow white to go a5.
Right.
That's just not legal in this position for black to do. So he's about to trade the a4 pawn with the f6 pawn. If that happens, our bet is off the table because those pawns have just disappeared.
Sure, but if you're going to do that, though, and you say a5 cannot be allowed to happen, what else are we thinking about here? Just take on a4 immediately.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
I think his hand is forced. I think he might have underestimated this sequence that we've just seen for Ruja. Maybe he just thought, I'm getting rid of the enemy flank pawns. Danger averted. But no, the Black King being this open with queens and knights nearby, that's going to force him on the defensive for the foreseeable future. And as we've seen so far in the 3 matches, neither side really wants to be defending. They would far rather be active about it. So the White Queen coming in seems inevitable. There we go. One pawn disappears, the other pawn disappears, still level footing. Black's center intact, but the king very, very weak here. And a pre-move on the screen from Nodebek.
You know, you take that rook, you want to recapture with the rook. So that's actually great online chess strategy, you know, for everyone watching, playing on chess.com. If there's a capture and you know what you want to take it back with, that's the pre-move that you want on your screen.
I should point out, we've seen pre-moves go wrong before. I experience pre-moves going wrong on a daily basis, I think it's fair to say. You want to make sure that you generally only use pre-moves in forcing situations where you know there's only the one continuation. Otherwise, if you accidentally pre-move and your opponent has multiple options to choose from, and they happen to pick the one you're not thinking about, often ends in immediate disaster.
Happens to all of us, John. You're not alone in that, but like in this case, after rook takes rook, it's got to be the move rook takes rook. You know, you have to keep your queen there defended. You just capture back, hit the black queen. I'll point out one idea that Alireza needs to watch out for in all positions. It's the queen sliding over to h6, the knight jumping over to g5. That's a checkmate in 3 that you need to watch out for.
Yeah, I'm wondering if something like knight d7 is almost forced so that you can play moves like, oh god, I'd be really scared to think about moves like f5 in this position, but I'm wondering if that actually allows the rooks and queen to slide across a little bit easier, try and take away g5 as a square. And yeah, we're addressing that threat immediately.
Hi guys, commentary with Mortal is back. Let's go. किसका साइड लें हम? हमें किसका अभी? हम नीचे से ही खेलते तो फिर हम वाइट की तरफ से सोचते हैं थोड़ा सा, है ना? वाइट की तरफ से सोचना हमारे लिए बेटर रहेगा मेरे ख्याल से. क्या आपको लगता है कि h3 पर पॉन लेके जाना? अच्छा, कुछ और ही हो गया ये तो. ये पूरा सबसे अप टू डेट किधर होता है? chess.com पे होता है क्या गाइस? हाँ, chess.com पे होता है क्या? साला लोग आके इधर बोलता है. किधर होता है? कोई वेबसाइट है क्या? कौन सा है? chess.com ही है क्या? लॉगिन यार, मेरा लॉगिन विद गूगल यही होगा मेरा लॉगिन, आई गेस सो. We found an existing account with the same email. Okay. पागल है क्या?
Having more time than your opponent to consider your next move. He's fantastic with 30 seconds on the clock, but is he more fantastic with Nordebek with 5 minutes, for example? That's always difficult to justify.
Yeah, he's learned his lesson, Nodebek. It's almost hopeless against Firouzja when it comes down to a mad scramble. The mouse skills just unparalleled. And here we see keeping a bank of time. 4 minutes 40 against 3 minutes 17. The pawn stepping forward, connect 4 again for the black pawn structure. I'm very biased towards that now, but it does mean that the white knights get a bit more access to squares. The black pawn's blocked for now on the dark squares. There we go. One knight jumps, creating a square for the other knight to leap forward to potentially. The white knight on d2 is currently unemployed, needs some kind of work. And very difficult to know how to improve here for black. Queen trades. Who does that favor? Might be white, unclear, and definitely not the type of position where there's easy moves. That's the key. That's why Firouzja was shaking his head.
Can the knight on b6 be used in a more clever way than just as a blockader of the pawn? Because I'm looking at the light squares that knight is looking at, and I'm going, it's clearly doing a good job of stopping that pawn advance. But beyond that, it's not really involved in creating any threats.
Password नहीं याद आ रहा.
The black knight, I think that's just just the problem. It takes a few moves to get to more.
Winner
active
of this
posts.
match will face
Not easy
Arjun.
now the route is cut off. That white rook hitting the black bishop, but also preventing the black knight from really moving. As Fallujah facing the threats. This is a golden opportunity. Abdusatrov's done everything right this game. Perfect game so far. Just the execution of the finish. If he gets a chance now, that is going to be the key.
बिना लॉगिन करे नहीं देख सकते क्या चेस?
Strange question here. Tanya, do you think this is one of those positions where later on we could see a c3 push, sacrificing that pawn so that c4 becomes an outpost for the knight? Is that a thing?
It's definitely on both players' radar. You know, you always have to watch out for that pawn advancing one square forward. Combine them with tactics or strategic ideas, like you mentioned, has to be timed
मेरे को
really
link
well.
भेजो ना
But I think
WhatsApp
the
पे.
position lends itself to
Mods.
extremely concrete play. So bishop to b8 first attacks the rook, and not about
एक साथी रखो जिसका चेस नॉलेज अच्छा है तब मजा आएगा मोटर में. I know but ऐसा कोई है नहीं.
Attacks that knight. Now your move c3 is being threatened. Now that the knight will assist that pawn to move ahead.
Yeah, not just that, but the black knight.
अरे
actually
प्रतीक्षा
has the
पंच
square
भाई
straight back too.
joining
The white
Rad
rook
gang.
almost trapped. From there, it will
Welcome,
lead into
welcome.
D3.
Redditor जी को
It's gonna
good news देंगे
transform
हम कि
from a
प्रतीक्षा
poor,
जी ने
lowly
आपका
horse to a stallion if it does
membership
land.
join किया है.
It just needs one more move, two more moves. This is dangerous suddenly for Abdusatov,
False
who
समय,
is
lol.
burning away that clock.
And I'm looking for ways for the white knights to maneuver themselves to try and stop that straight away. It's going to take several moves for that to happen. There's no like one
को
move
मिल नहीं रहा
counter
है.
offering to swap off a pair of knights.
No, that's not a luxury that Nonnebeck has right now. And you know, these are the difficult moments to deal with because you've been on the attack. You've been the one who's been putting the pressure on the front foot. And now suddenly, out of nowhere, one of the worst pieces on the board for Alireza Firouzja becomes a big, big weapon. You know, that
Yeah.
knight, if it lands on d3, combine it with the queen against the white king, it might be Nonnebeck who needs to go on the defense. He moves forward with the knight because that's the only chess that these guys know. Go forward, attacks the bishop, continues to attack the bishop, not giving black the time for that knight maneuver.
He's really consistently, stubbornly hunting down that bishop now. Not too many safe squares for it. There we go. It finds a way to create a threat, at least, hitting the white rook on c1, which doesn't have too many safe squares of its own. There we go. Protects its own king. Now, the white king huddled up nice and safe. It's just about whether white can create any threats before the black pawns push forward.
I'm scared. I'm scared for that c-pawn. I mean, 3 steps away from becoming a queen, a direct path assisted by its own minor pieces right there. This is
म्यूजिक
this is getting
म्यूजिक
fun.
मतलब
There was a part of me
म्यूजिक
that was
वीडियो
thinking,
शूट
wait a
डन.
second, we're gonna have to
कौन
start
बोला
calculating
म्यूजिक वीडियो
whether or
शूट
not
है?
we can just
कल है
right
शूट
now,
जो भी है
because the
कल है
bishop on
आज
A3
नहीं
is
है.
watching the queening square as well. This is so dangerous for white.
So dangerous. This could turn. The eval bar says big advantage and whoa, tactics. If that knight is captured, the white queen is staring across the board at the black knight. The queen's vision on the 5th rank now blocked by the black rook. He needs to keep up the energy here, Nodebek. Is there a reply? Maybe he missed this block by the black rook. Fallujah certainly missed the knight jump, but reacted and recovered very well.
Wow. So now, black is about to win a piece.
Whoa, he gives up his queen.
What?
He gives up the white queen. He gets a rook, a bishop, and pawn in return. It's actually level material after all of that. But you have to think that the black queen is going to do a good job of covering everything here.
And also creating chaos, thriving under time pressure. It's 2 minutes versus 1.
रुको गाइस. सांबा सांबा. यहाँ देखेंगे हम chess.com पे विदाउट ऑडियो देखेंगे हम लोग ताकि मैं आप लोग से बतिया भी सकूं और ये अप टू डेट है. सबसे बेस्ट बात है.
Rook, knight, and pawn.
अच्छा इधर भी
That
कास्टिंग है.
worth more than just a pawn. You know, it's going to make
अच्छा, ये
sure that
Twitch
it
है.
ties down plenty of black pieces.
की
Now,
गाड़ गई.
Nodebek attacks the black knight as well, pushes the pawn. Nodebek might be down a queen, but he's still playing for the win.
Yep. Clock is key here. 2 minutes versus 1 minute.
You can watch SBS India, but मैं English casting ही देख सकता हूँ. It's a rule.
Just remove your own knight from attack.
खेलना आता है तेरे को bot. बस bot जैसा ही खेलना आता है मेरे को भाई.
Aronian has said it. It's easier to play with pieces.
अरे अली रजा टाइम डाउन हो गया.
You have more pieces to pre-move with. This is his golden opportunity. Can he seize it?
And it's 49 seconds for Alireza Firouzja, who needs only a draw to advance to the semi-finals. A semi-final spot on the line. Nodebek Abdusatov has created everything, all the opportunities to get that comeback win. The knight moves forward. The black queen needs to attack the white knight to keep the material balance. Rook takes knight, queen takes knight, loses another pawn.
It's now
Hi,
2
King
points
Day,
over the
कैसा
knight
है?
and the queen.
Literally
So
long
much
time.
material. The white knight isn't a great piece, but it can save itself, can improve itself. He's only got 34 seconds, still so much of the game.
भाई
ahead.
130
Alireza
का
Firouzja
हार्ट रेट गया है अली का,
headed to Armageddon
अली
now.
रजा का.
Abdusattorov nervously looking at the clock, shaking. You can see the nerves on his face as he calculates, retreating with his knight. That's not a great square, but there we go. He carves out a square for it to jump forward to.
But it comes at the cost of a big pawn in the center. And now Alireza gets the rook to tie down that B pawn from moving forward. Nordebek Abdusattorov trying to activate every single piece. 27 seconds.
1 whole minute advantage for Nordebek in the time scramble. Firouzja is going to need to show off all of those bullet skills to save this one. The checks continue. The Black King being tracked down now. The White Rook still needs
Best
to
of luck and hit.
Still eyeing up some pawns.
This is going into an Armageddon. That is my prediction. 19 seconds. I know Alireza Firouzja, he is an absolute mega beast with that much time on the clock. But look at the position. The 2 rooks coming in. Checks. Pawn on F6 being attacked right now. Defended. Gives a check.
Big mistake apparently from Alireza Firouzja. It's not about the board, of course, it's more about the clock. But the White Rooks are wreaking havoc right now. The Black King is actually about to be checked back to the back rank. And there we go. Nice hit on the Black Queen. Finding a way to keep the tension, keep material.
Oh!
He's blundered his
Oh
rook.
my goodness,
Nordebek.
no!
He's blundered his rook with 12 seconds for Alireza.
He's still playing on the clock. That was a blind spot. Nordebek Abdusattorov recovers, gets straight back to the board. But now, completely lost on the board. Alireza Firouzja about to deliver checkmate, and he does. He goes through to the semi-finals.
Alireza Firouzja in dramatic fashion, might I remind you, 30 seconds played, a minute 40, back against the wall, incredible imbalances in the game, manages to
My
win
God.
the checkmate on the board to seal the series 3-1 and advance
भाई वो
to
time
the
पे तो खेल रहा था.
semi-finals of the Esports
Damn.
World Cup.
हाय यूजी भाई, कैसे हो? यूजी भाई यार मेरे को आप सिखाओगे चेस? आ जाओ डिस्कॉर्ड पे आ जाओ, मेरे को चेस सिखा दो साथ में. भाई क्या डेंजर चालू है यूजी भाई.
But no, Alireza Firouzja stamping his authority
Too good.
again. It was helped, aided by that rook blunder from Abdusattorov, but here we go. The rook takes h7 slip, causing the game to turn.
और यूजी भाई कैसे हो?
Check. There was no time for white to go and skew everything.
मेरे को आता है चेस. आपके साथ खेला तो है मैंने यूजी भाई, मेरे को फंसा दिया था यूजी भाई खेल के.
Play on Alireza. This checkmate at the end, so sharp. 9 seconds. He sacrifices his queen. Brilliant.
These tactics, he eats them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Alireza Firouzja, he's the guy who topped C group. And this is how he finishes it off. You know, not just the scoreline, not the fact that he needed even to go into an Armageddon, but how he dominated.
हम
the
यूजी भाई
match
के साथ
with
एक बार
his
चेस
pace
खेला
from the
था.
start. Incredible.
एक दिन यूजी भाई यहाँ पे गेमिंग हाउस में जब थे ना, तो हम लोग चेस खेल रहे थे, ठीक है. बाप रे बाप, ऐसा यूजी भाई ने मेरे को हराया ना. मैंने बोला मैं यूजी भाई के साथ खेलना ही नहीं चाहता हूँ, खेलना ही नहीं चाहता हूँ चेस. मतलब नहीं, नो चांस.
Like time was the main factor in this entire series.
My God.
Game 1 almost with the distance. Game 2, Game 3, all these games. What was going through your head in that last game when you're down 50 seconds? You see him blunder that rook.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy at the end. Of course, I had the lead, so it was like worst case I will lose. I have the Armageddon still, so it was a very tense match. Yeah.
Very tense indeed, and I want to ask you, do you
उसके
just
tension देखो बे.
thrive under that pressure? You seem to just love playing when there's like 15, 20 seconds. I mean, at this point, 10 seconds on the clock at the end. Is that where you feel like you're in your strongest? You're in your element?
Yeah, I think my advantage to others is that I can use my time and play a lot of moves at the end with few seconds. So I use that, and yeah, sometimes it pays off. Yeah.
I mean, it definitely paid off there. Congratulations. You are now our second semi-finalist. You will
Chat
be
नहीं
facing
पड़ा यूजी भाई का, एक
Arjun
second.
for a spot in the grand finals. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have 2 more quarterfinals to play and find out who will be the rest to join us in the final 4. So let's head on over back to the studio.
For that you need mind, my bro. Excuse me, यूजी
He
भाई.
says sometimes the speed is working in his favor. I'd say here at the Esports World Cup, it's always working in his favor. Alireza Firouzja comes out on top.
Next
against
match,
Nordebek
दूसरा match
Abdusattorov
कहाँ पे हो
in
रहा
our
है?
First quarterfinal of the day, and what a finish it was, Yovi. Finding that blunder, but with less time on the clock.
दूसरा मैच कैसे लगाऊं यहाँ से अभी?
Put the pressure on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was tense from start to finish. I mean, in this game that we're seeing right
ये
now.
स्ट्रीम बी का भी लिंक भेजना मेरे को.
It was gonna go to Armageddon. Norderbeck was gonna do it, win on demand.
मेरे को स्ट्रीम बी का भेजना. कोई रुद्र.
Ali Reza just drawing in every ounce of energy, strength, wit to kind of navigate that time trouble. Oh my God.
When there's seconds on the clock, you get nervous, your hands shake. This guy
Left में देखो.
is living in his refrigerator. He's so absolutely cool. You saw how his opponent cracked under the pressure just when he had the chance. He was right there. Then he blundered his rook, and then he blundered mate. Well, the mate was produced in spectacular fashion by Alireza. It's just when the pressure's on, the bullet skills come out, and
नहीं chess.com पे कैसे देखूं
purely
मैं?
quick in the finish.
And you saw right there the reaction from Noderbeck himself. A bit surprised at the mistake, but again, Alireza Firouzja, at just the young age of 22, he sees the opportunity, he takes it. He already had the lead in the matchup, but he decides, hey, we're not going to Armageddon. I'm not giving you another breath of life.
I don't think he was even thinking about it. He was just moving on instinct. He knew the situation. He felt like he had
हिकारू का मैच
controlled
देखते आओ.
everything. And that's
आओ इधर ही
The
देखते हैं.
position rook b8,
That's
the
the move.
b4 pawn is hanging. He has
Levon
had the
versus
right moment for
Hikaru.
this move, and I think Eric, without d4, rook d4 would have been played by Levon.
Yeah, rook d4 has so many benefits for white.
Score क्या है? 0-0 game 1 of 1 है ये.
Understands what Levon's striving for.
Guys.
It's very clear what white's plan is, was playing on the dark squares. Finally, with the move d4, you control some dark squares, you take them away. But the question is, how do you defend d4?
15 मिनट है यार हमारे मैच को almost.
That's a great question. Yeah, you could play a move like bishop to f5 and try to play d3, maybe with some mass exchanges, and then the rook from c6 could slide to c4.
बहुत
after
दगदग हो रहा है.
attacking the f4 pawn and the b4 pawn.
बहुत.
This maybe is a similar idea. The rook can come to d4, Eric. b4 and f4 are both attacked, which makes me think
वर्चुस प्रो है ना ये सामने वाली टीम.
the move that prevents that.
फैल्कन्स वर्सेस वर्चुस प्रो है ना ये.
d3
मेरे को
prevents it, but
है ना?
you mentioned
फैल्कन से 2 प्लेयर नहीं, फैल्कन में और ज्यादा प्लेयर है.
Once the knight vacates
2
that
हाँ
square,
हिकारू है,
slide
अली
over
फिरोजा
to
है.
c4 where it puts pressure on
और
f4
कौन है? यही है क्या?
and
2.
b4.
अच्छा रिजेक्ट है क्या ये?
Tough
ओके
ask for
ओके.
white
यस
to
बोलता है मेरे
maintain
भी
that.
देख.
I do think that
Team
bishop
reject.
c7, knight c5, and rook d4 earlier by Levon was a big moment missed. And now we're in a position where the activity from
Alon
White's
Gaming
up
1
is
M,
up a
thank you
minute.
so much for
We
the
do see this
39
move.
super chat.
Hikar's going to go right for that. Takes and
Auntie ji
rook
कैसी है
c4.
मतलब Auntie ji is good. You know Ali Reza is a good fashion designer. He wanted to become a fashion designer but his father forced him to play
In order
chess.
to hit that
Damn.
knight, Levon's dropping one of these pawns. I think at minimum, Black is making a draw here, Eric. And, I think Hikaru can look for more.
Yeah, it depends which pawn.
Hikaru
you
is
lose. You
white.
lose the f4 pawn. E5
Hikaru is
fairly
black.
Weak. And remember,
Levon
bishop
is
and
white.
rook can be better than knights in these open positions with pawns on both sides of the board. So it's a position that might have looked okay or even promising, but now I think Levon has to be very careful. He's down a minute on the clock, and Hikaru has an active position. This is what he thrives.
What if ये C1 पे लेके जाए अपने rook
If
को
rook
Levon?
d1 is bishop f5. No matter where the rook goes, you're saying bishop f5 is coming, and how do you hold on to everything? Because then rook d4 comes in, f4, b4.
Exactly.
And white's king is on g1. Black's king is on e7. Even in some king and pawn endgames, Black's king might be there first.
Yep, it could get to the action first. And let's not forget, we haven't really seen that pure flag today in the quarterfinals. We are in that territory. It's almost a 2-minute time advantage. I can see a reality where the bishop goes to f5, trades for the knight, the rook takes back, Hikaru wins one of the pawns, and we get to some sort of rook endgame. That can go a long time. And I can actually see a reality where he plays for a win on the clock.
For sure. Bishop f5 right now.
Yeah, bishop f5. You have to hit that knight, I think. Knight to f2. I mean,
think
dealer's choice. Which pawn do you grab?
I'm looking to play h4 if I can. I would love to fix f4 as a weakness. Is there time to play? He doesn't need to do it. I just wasn't sure if Levon was going for a g4 move.
Right, because rook c7 was there. So if you play h4, rook takes f4, rook c7,
Check.
rook takes b7 was in the air. So of course he takes the b pawn to defend his own. You can play king e8, king e6 here. Yes, there's g4 in the position for Levon. That's probably going to be the next move. You do have to watch the f7 pawn.
Bishop d7. The idea, you can sometimes play king d8, and that rook can't stay
आप
on the
क्या
center.
react कर रहे हो?
Find a configuration where you can target a5, f4 is loose. So again, clock is a really, really big factor here. I don't want to name names, but I spoke to someone.
बोर्ड या बार? मैं बोर्ड पे समझता हूँ,
but
बट जब बहुत फास्ट होता है तब मेरे को समझ नहीं आता है.
It's going to come down to that. That's what I was told. this could be an example.
Exactly.
बहुत फास्ट जब होता है तो एज अ व्यूअर मेरे को समझ थोड़ा सा टाइम लगता है आने में कि क्या हुआ.
You know, that would be a huge achievement, but there is going to be a rook b1 check, right? You can throw that in. He can play king d8, right, to get out, and then the bishop can come to c6, and you know, slowly improving that position. You can target more pawns. Rook b5.
I want to play h4 when I have an opportunity. h4, I want to fix those pawns on g2 and h3.
Magnus versus Nihal is 7:30.
In some positions to play g3. But the question is, maybe rook b5 first.
इसी पे आएगा, ये मैच के बाद आएगा guys.
Hikaru's looking for an advantage. He's pressing this because from my perspective,
नहीं स्ट्रीम ए पे आएगा.
I think white is under tremendous pressure.
Yep.
Already.
Huge pressure. Even though the actual evaluation might be around equal here, you can see Hikaru posturing up in his chair.
मेरा हार्ट थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा धक कर रहा है यार.
He's in a position he can push. H4, your idea. Bishop F5, Rook B5. There are so many different ways. He just needs to elongate the game because he's a much faster player than Levon Aronian.
अच्छा दूसरे वाले पे आएगा.
Right. Prolong the game, and if Levon finds himself under 30 seconds, he can no longer even think. He just has to move.
Yep. Yeah, so rook c3. Of course, if the bishop captures on d3, you take back with a check. He probably doesn't want to pull the trigger on that just yet. But I do think if we were 30, 40 seconds less on the clock,
7:30 को मैच है guys, 12 मिनट है.
Because in some ways, you think of that as almost a guaranteed flag.
I'm wondering if Hikaru's worried that rook b5, there's knight c5, and how do you unravel? But we have h4 is such a
मेरे को टेंशन हो रहा है.
Key move. You've been talking about that one for a
A
while.
पे करो.
Because now white structure on the king side isn't good. You can't generate a pass pawn easily. And if
हाँ next coming up next 15 मिनट है guys इस मैच को अभी.
pass pawns to win the game.
Okay, so how do we make progress here?
है 15 मिनट है अभी.
If you want, you can capture on a5 now, but what will follow is knight b7, rook c7, knight d6.
If anyone loses a match, will they be out of the tournament? हाँ मतलब ये 4 गेम्स होंगे टोटल. हिकारू की हार्ट रेट 114 और उसकी हार्ट रेट 118. My God.
Hikaru completely expected this. There's nothing worse when you only have a minute.
एंट्री हो गई है. हाँ अच्छा
completely expecting everything he's doing.
मेरे को बहुत स्ट्रेस हो रहा है कसम. मेरा बाल ऐसा लग रहा है गिर रहा है बैठे बैठे. Big question mark.
I'm searching. Amon, can you go rook b1? What happens
Big
after
fat
rook b1?
question mark.
Rook check, and then you have rook h3. What do you
That's
do
exactly
after rook
right.
b1?
And he's
That's
thinking
a mating net.
rook b1, rook b2, they both seem to accomplish the same thing. Why is Hikaru spending time here when he could capture? He knows something is up.
The bishop dominates white's knight. They can't even bring the knight to defend on the h file. Hikaru's shaking his head. Does that mean...
Guys, सारा एनर्जी भेजो भाई निहाल को. सारा एनर्जी.
What do you even do there? Why is that?
Sub.
I don't see a way to prevent it.
It's just weird to look for a mate when it was never there.
goodness.
He misses it, and Levon is back in the game.
He is right back in it, and time was spent there. He misses what looked like an absolute win, stone cold on the spot. We're back in an even position here. He's going to recapture that pawn on e5.
Take on e5, then I can take on a5 though, and e5 falls. All Hikaru needs is pieces on the board.
So
ये अपने pawn को हाँ.
Yes, f5, f6. This is going to get very interesting because the knight can slide back maybe to d3.
वो टेक डाउन कर सकता है ना pawn को.
Knight takes e5. I still
अपने
think
king से
has the edge here. He's up upon
है ना.
temporarily.
Levon needs to speed up here.
पूरी.
Knight a4. That move feels wrong. It's on the side of the board, but you know,
And
it does have an idea.
There's some discovered checks, and look at that bishop on d5. It covers f7. It just cuts off a lot of the board. Hikaru's looking at e4, bishop e3.
टाइम है गाइस. 4 मिनट है. 4 मिनट है. 4 मिनट है. चिल 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 चिल. Are players able to see the bar? No bro. Players cannot see the bar. All is well. 5 मिनट हो गया. टाइम बढ़ गया गाइस. टाइम बढ़ गया. All is well. 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 ऐड आ रहा है. रुक जाओ ना गाइस. ऐड खत्म होने दो. अरे इंटरनेट एक्सप्लोरर.
It's coming. He's down on the clock. He's down on the board. I don't see a way out of
King
this.
e6 is a fantastic move. Where are the...
There's no rook c6.
मैच डिले हुआ है थोड़ा सा.
And now the white king is cut off.
टाइम से ही जीत जाएगा.
Levon's going to place his rook on b6 if he has an opportunity.
He's up a lot, and the thing is, Hikaru doesn't need to win in normal fashion anymore. This is going to be a flag. Can Hikaru Nakamura and Team Falcons do it?
Levon under 10 seconds.
He can't play king b3, watch out. Even if white wins that pawn, it doesn't matter. Oh, this is a tough
Levon
position.
down to 6. He's going to need a miracle here.
This is looking
He's
like a
removed one
flag.
pawn. He has to
Hikaru
trade rooks.
Nakamura. 4 seconds for Levon to run.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
I
What a
can't believe
blunder.
it. He could even lose this game.
2 seconds. Can Levon pull it off?
Oh my
He has to cut the
God.
king off.
He's not able to do it.
Oh,
I don't think this
what
will be a
choke.
checkmate. He's just not able to do it. Oh my goodness, that almost turned completely around.
What?
A draw at the end of the day. Eric, probably the most thrilling draw we've ever seen. It looked like, you know, Hikaru Nakamura, that's exactly where he thrives.
Draw ho
He
gaya.
tried that position so many times. I can't believe he didn't pull it off here.
Amon, I've probably lost to Hikaru in that situation, like 100 out of 100.
Hikaru का game था ना?
He was up on the clock. There was no risk. He
Wasn't this Hikaru का match पूरा उसका वो rook take down हो गया?
Flag. And Levon, you know, credit to him. He didn't pre-move that. Because if he was in pre-move mode, he wouldn't have missed.
आज rook blunder करने का दिन है.
We saw yesterday, Wei Yi versus Nakamura. Wei Yi had a similar tactic. Didn't find
Model stomach में butterflies हो रहा है भाई.
What a save by Levon
मत दुखती नस पर.
That is Levon saving a point or a
डरती नस पर, दुखती नहीं, डरती नस पर.
He knows he's the underdog. That's a weakness for him. So for him to show up
1.5 मिनट
in
बचा
that
है.
time scramble, 20 seconds to 5 seconds, that's amazing for his confidence going forward. Hikaru was not able to pull off that flag.
It's all about recovering now if you're in Hikaru's shoes. He knows that was a free point.
भाड़ में गया. रुक जाओ, हम इधर चलते हैं. गाइस, निहाल का मैच इसी पे आने वाला है, यहाँ पर ही, इसी जगह पर. 1 minute remaining. साला फाइनल बॉस से हम लोग स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, ऐसा फील हो रहा है. वो जैसे होता है ना, जब हम लोग एल्डन रिंग में स्टार्ट करते हैं तो ट्री सेंटिनल के अगेंस्ट स्टार्टिंग में हम लोग लड़ने जाते हैं, वही सब फीलिंग आ रहा है. आई विश निहाल पुल्स ऑफ अ मिरेकल एंड एडवांसेस इनटू सेमी सिंस नेक्स्ट मैच ही इज गोना प्ले अगेंस्ट ग्रेटेस्ट चेस प्लेयर इन द हिस्ट्री. आई नो. Never thought that we as SATL would be facing Magnus Carlsen, to be very honest. Obviously with Nihal. But ये चीज कभी मैंने सोची नहीं थी. क्या? मुंह धो के आता हूँ मैं बाबा. फट रही है मेरी.
Welcome back to Chess at the Esports World Cup, where we have 2 quarterfinals down and 2 to go. The next one here on Stream A, though, sports the world #1 in Magnus Carlsen up against the dark horse in NIHAL Serene. And we're welcoming in for the first time today, GM Ben Feingold, to help us preview the match. So I'm coming to you first, my friend. It really is, you know, a tale of 2 sides of that table, the favorite to the dark horse. How are you looking at this matchup?
Yeah, and Magnus was always saying he wanted to play the new generation of players like Firouzja, like NIHAL, like Abdusattorov. So Magnus got what he wanted, but we'll see if the Dark Horse lives up to his name. It's going to be a tough match for Magnus. NIHAL, so good with less than a minute on his clock. This is the time control where you think Magnus has the least advantage over NIHAL.
Magnus getting what he wanted. He wants to challenge or be challenged by the younger generation, and that's because he
JMD.
is the titan that he is within the chess world. For more
मैं
on Magnus
Redditor
and
जी
his
को कॉल लगा के बोल
historic
देता हूँ मैच
run
स्टार्ट
as
हो
the
रहा है.
world #1 in the world of chess. Let's go to a quick video.
I
think Magnus's chess is
मत
just
देख
out
भाई
of this
ऐसे।
planet. You know, he's been the world #1 for more than a decade. His domination makes him the greatest of all time.
There we go. So resignation. Magnus takes the win. It was about to be checkmate, or Black would have had to give up too much material. Queen and Knight combo again. Magnus on fire. He was
Guys, pura energy, pura energy, pura energy, pura energy.
1990. So when he was learning the game in his early years, technology was starting to help. Computers were starting to help. But Magnus, of course, he has a lot of raw talent, raw ability. Much of it.
4 matches होंगे total, guys. 4
It's
matches.
almost photographic. He can remember chess games he played 25 years ago. He also has this thirst for knowledge, always trying to learn more. He's always watching games. He's obsessed with chess.
No, because then it's a draw. Wow. King G7, what recognition? Magnus is the king of that.
Magnus is, in my opinion, truly the best chess player to have ever walked on this planet. And I'm not saying that lightly. We've obviously had some very good players in the past, Garry Kasparov, Bobby Fischer, but nobody is quite at the same level of Magnus.
Most of the time, I just try to put pressure on when they make mistakes. Yeah, obviously resigning in a winning position, that's kind of an extreme example of trusting your opponent when you shouldn't.
There is no weakness about him, and of course he thrives under pressure. Even when if you even have a heart rate monitor on him, you'll get to see that in times where pressure could be very high, he's very calm. And of course you see that from a 5-time world champion in classical chess. A very confident, strong Magnus is extremely hard to beat, almost unbeatable in a way. So that's probably the hardest thing to do, and the hardest player to face is Magnus.
And when we speak about legends of the game, you know, it's not just about how they push their own limits, but how they push the limits of the game itself, of the sport itself. And I think that's been Magnus's big contribution to chess. It's not just over the board, what he shows, his skill set in every aspect of the game, but also what he's done for chess overall to make the sport grow, and as an ambassador for the EWC, for the Esports World Cup.
I want to win everything that's in front of me, and the Esports World Cup is one. It's new, but it's also an exciting format and a direction where I really want chess to go.
I'll be around for a while still, and they will have to earn it. I'm not gonna necessarily give it to them.
There you go. Okay.
इस दानव को ही देना था हमारे
An
against.
indelible mark on the world of chess, but you heard it from him right there. I'm not done yet. I'll be around for a while. And so I turn to you, Yovi. It is really a titanic matchup. This guy, though, for how good he is, there's one more thing that I'll add to it. It's win or nothing for him. It's really the thing that he cares about most. I've never met somebody so competitive.
He's incredibly competitive. Also, you know, he has this big desire to win in absolutely anything he tries. But as David there said in the video, he's obsessed by the game. He's simply always thinking about chess. And I would say that his preparation at times is very relaxed. You know, he prefers physical fitness and just keeping calm to actually over the board study. But it really seems to work for him. He just plays tremendous chess in whatever format there is.
I would not be surprised if 18 holes of golf were played already today by Magnus Carlsen as a warm-up to stepping onto the Esports World Cup stage. But as we narrow down towards this matchup, I'm really interested then how our dark horse rather in NIHAL Sarin can get it done, because by all accounts, with everything we've said, it
राजू को
sounds
बुलाता
like
हूँ पीछे बैठने के लिए सेम जगह पे.
No, I mean, Magnus obviously is the huge favorite on paper. What NIHAL has to do is get good positions out of the opening with a nice time advantage. If he can put the pressure on Magnus, sometimes the pressure gets to you. Now, the match is a 4-game match, which helps Magnus. He can make a blunder or lose a game and still come back. So NIHAL has his work cut out for him. But if anybody can do it, NIHAL with his great skills in bullet and blitz, he can do it. But Magnus obviously is the huge favorite. And I got to pick. I'm picking Magnus. I'm always picking Magnus.
All right, I'm not going to press you too hard on that pick in this one. I'll let you get away with it. But how about that? Just the idea that we've expanded from 2 games to 4 games. Maybe your best opportunity to beat Magnus was actually in the group stage, and it's only getting more difficult as he has more room to maneuver.
Exactly, because it's 4 games, right? You know, you win 1 game against Magnus, he's going to be incentivized to make that big comeback. And you know what we say about Magnus? He's really motivated by those losses. But just to echo what Ben was saying, you know, I feel that if Nihal wants to win this match, then basically he has to get Magnus to be frustrated. He has to really, really just turn the screw, try to navigate those kind of positions where Magnus feels like he really
vitamin
has to push
protein.
forward. It's very difficult to do because, of course, beating Magnus is what everyone is trying to do, and everyone is not doing that very, very well. I mean, it is the million-dollar question, but yeah, I mean, Nihal has to rely on his strengths, and that is in those closing seconds.
So in the closing seconds, that's interesting because I was about to ask, does he need to come out playing fast?
For me, I think that he needs to keep toe-to-toe with Magnus in terms of time, but get those long games where he can frustrate Magnus on the clock at the end.
All right, well, you're picking Magnus. You've already talked to me a little bit about how Nihal gets it done for Magnus, though. Let's talk about what we want to see out of him to prove to us that he really is in top form as he races towards the finals.
Magnus wants to keep control. He wants to get an advantage with the white pieces, get a time advantage, put the pressure on, which he loves to do. With the black pieces, Magnus tries to equalize, get an equal position, gain a little time on the clock, and again, use his experience to beat his inexperienced opponent. That's Magnus's recipe for success, and he's been very successful for many years.
Magnus's teammate exited the tournament early, so he is the last bastion of hope here for Team Liquid. Wonder if that will add to the pressure a little bit. Another interesting conversation could be about the idea of pushing Magnus to an Armageddon. Am I trying to actually maybe just draw all the way to an Armageddon? That's my best shot as NIHAL.
Yeah, that would be a good strategy, but first, you know, you've got to overcome the whole drawing 4 games against Magnus. Not easy. But what I would say is NIHAL just has to instill chaos on the board. Magnus is in his element in those comfortable, very safe positions. Just get it wild.
No, I can safely say I would draw 4 games against Magnus. The problem is we'd have to play about 500 games for that to happen.
Okay.
4 out of 4.
And even still, unfortunately, he's the one advancing. Either way, there you have it. Our next quarterfinal bout out onto the stage. It's the world #1 in Magnus Carlsen looking to do it again on a new stage here in chess. NIHAL Sarin, though, he might have something to say about it. Let's get into our next quarterfinal. And you might notice a name that came out of the last chance qualifier over another LCQ qualifier in Anish Giri. That was his first match of the day here for NIHAL Sarin, and he's proving that point.
NIHAL Sarin is an absolute beast. Love watching his play. He's an unorthodox type of style player. He gets people out of theory very quickly. He gets positions he likes. He's able to move fast and keep you thinking while he actually knows what he's doing already.
His speed and also his precision in pressure situations, it reminded me a lot of a couple of the runs he's done at the Chess.com Global Championship. If he gets the right matchups and has a good week, he could do really well.
Well, I knew him from Global Chess Championship. And I remember him just playing incredible chess there, where I started seeing him on the scene. I was like, wow, NIHAL is beating everyone, or he's like just getting to a zone.
Yeah, NIHAL Sarin has been super impressive. I mean, he made it all the way through the qualifier. Then he also beat Anish today, which is something I did not expect. And he also beat Maxime Vacher-Legrave. So for me, he's really the big surprise of the tournament that he made it to the quarterfinals. But he's showing that he can really beat anyone.
NIHAL Sarin has had a crazy road to get to this point. I mean, he came in through the last chance qualifiers, and he's had to fight his way to get to this point.
It would be, of course, absolutely amazing to get a chance to play against Magnus. Speaking of a game plan, well, try my best to be cool and just try to give my absolute best to have any chance. So.
NIHAL!
For the next semi-finalist begins right now, Sandstorm.
That's right, Tyler. Alia Yakta Est. The die is cast, and it has chosen our next 2 contenders. A king comes down from his throne as a challenger approaches and aims for his crown. Welcome, the challenger, NIHAL Sarin!
Versus Team Liquid's Magnus Carlsen!
A fearless prodigy with everything to prove versus the King of Kings with nothing left to fear. Getting a little overexcited over there.
I want to put that key down right away. Not gonna ask you too many questions, guys. Just one simple one. Are you ready?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Same question. Magnus, you've been here so many times before. Are you ready for, I want to say, like, for another challenge?
Yeah, always.
Always. I like it. Well, gentlemen, keys onto the pedestals. Gentlemen, make some noise for your second quarterfinal on the stage. It's Liquid versus SAUL. Magnus Carlsen versus NIHAL Serene. Casters, this legendary matchup is yours.
Thank you very much, folks. This is incredibly exciting. The King versus the Challenger. We mustn't forget, though, they come into this on equal footing. No one's here to knock anyone off
white
the
hai.
pedestal. They've already reached.
We begin with
Everything
white.
is earned here at the Esports World Cup. Magnus Carlsen had the easier route in. He's had an extra day off, but at the same time, NIHAL Serene feels like he's thriving off of situations where he's being forced to play more and more and more. He gets thrown in the deep end, and he
We are
doesn't seem
white.
to have a problem
I
with
know.
it. He doesn't want to stop.
Yeah, NIHAL Serene has been so impressive, taking down some giants in the last-minute qualifier, and here already on stage in Riyadh. Magnus
Oh, we are
Carlsen
black. Okay.
warmed up on day one, had a day off. This might be the time for NIHAL to strike, though, with Magnus coming in fresh after that 24 hours of a break.
Getting to the stage for Magnus Carlsen, he cruised through with wins against Nordebek Abdusattorov and Jan Krzysztof Duda. A different storyline for the kid, for the prodigy on the stage. NIHAL Serene taking down yesterday some big giants himself. Momentum is on his side. Wins
Focus,
against
guys,
Anthony
focus!
Gordon, wins against Anish Giri without a single loss. You know, on paper, Magnus Carlsen wins this matchup 9 out of 10 times. Even NIHAL Serene here, looking for that 1 out of 10, and he wants to do it today.
Well, like Ben said on the desk, right? 4 draws in 500 against Magnus. You know what? Those 4 draws could come now, right? And that could instantly send Ben into the Armageddon for all we know. The point is, if the opportunity is there, you take it. And NIHAL Serene, Magnus himself said his performance is absolutely incredible. He's gone out of his way to praise his opponent, and it's very weird being on a stage as well.
We are black,
where
guys.
We're talking about a chess prodigy, and it's not Magnus, but he sat there himself. This is very exciting. It has the potential to really serve us up a classic.
Exactly, and although he does start as the underdog NIHAL Serene, he has the weapons to hurt Magnus. He has the mouse skills. He did it against MVL, some trickery in a difficult position, helping him on the clock. He did it against Anish Giri, forcing Anish to blunder a queen in a winning position, again, due to clock pressure. And if he can cling on, survive in these games against Magnus, take it down to the wire, down deep into the endgame, maybe he'll stand a chance. In the meantime, it's the Catalan opening to start this one.
NIHAL's best chance in this match would be really trying to get into those time scrambles where both players have got about a minute on the clock and the position is dynamic. It's crazy. It's still got pieces on the board, and he's not completely lost in that because Magnus converts that then. For NIHAL, it's going to be about building that time pressure, trying to get to that Armageddon. The odds for him would increase. I'll say one thing. NIHAL is the one player who's played more bullet,
right,
barring Hikaru Nakamura and Alireza Firouzja, on the planet.
Which is...
And that sort of has built this cheat code in him, which gets activated under 1 minute. And I think that's what he'll be looking for today in this matchup.
I mean, that's amazing, right? The fact that he's, in terms of number of games played, he's 3rd place behind 2 of the favorites to win this whole thing. It really shows that he belongs in that top drawer alongside all of the rest of these names. So he's fantastic when the time gets scarce, but he has to build up that advantage to begin with, and he's already 1 minute behind Magnus at this stage of the game. And I have to say, I'm a little bit surprised because considering that game plan, like you rightly mentioned, Tanya, I feel like NIHAL should be blitzing these out to try and get a 1-2 minute advantage very, very early on, but he's on the receiving end of that right now.
Yeah, the one thing about Magnus, though, is that he at least starts games quite quickly. The only time he really slows down is if it's super complicated. There's a lot to calculate, but this isn't one of those types of positions. It's hard, of course, when you start with black. For NIHAL, a draw would be a great way to begin this quarterfinal, but the pawn that he went up, NIHAL Serene, is about to fall. Magnus pawn hunting with his queen. It's a queen's gambit accepted in a way, but Magnus is going to remove the word gambit from the equation.
On the very next move, and you know, speaking of trying to build on the clock, it's not easy when you're up against Magnus Carlsen. You also have to balance that on the edge of your sword by not just getting into a position that you're completely lost in the first 15 moves.
Sure, yeah.
So you have to play the good moves. You have to keep control over the clock, and that doesn't seem to be going so well for NIHAL so far, reaching the 7.5 minute mark. And I still think it's early days. The Catalan, one of the most studded openings, slightly surprised how much time Nihal's taking here.
I'm worried that we have some parallels here from the conversations that we were talking about earlier with Nordebek versus Ferrugia, for example, where you can be an absolute beast with under a minute on your clock. But to what extent does that matter when your opponent still has 5, for example? And I'm a little scared because that advantage is about to go above 2 minutes, and we're only on move 12 of a very well-studied opening. So I'm curious to get inside the head of Nihal Sarin here and find out, well, what is it he's thinking about right now? What is he planning? What does he unleash off the back of this?
Yeah, he unleashes this move, a pawn sacrifice of his own, and Magnus reacts there on the camera. This one is a pawn sacrifice in 2 different ways. Can be captured by the queen, it can be captured by the pawn. Either way, there are downsides for white. He does take with the pawn. Maybe if we just go back a move to show what could have happened if he had taken with the queen here, Magnus Carlsen. The black knight would have jumped into b3 with a nasty fork. This one devastating the black knight, snacking on the white rook in the corner next move. Instead, taking with the pawn comes with downsides as well, as we see Nihal has jumped into the center with his knight, and the white pawns are wrecked on the queen side, all isolated, all weak, long-term, short-term. This is a great way to fight against Magnus in the opening. Go direct as Magnus swings his queen across. Already a question mark from the world number 1.
Magnus going direct as well. Yes, I see the question mark, but again, a very human approach, right? He sets ideas of his own. That bishop from c1 is now about to snack on that pawn on h6 as the g7 pawn was pinned, forcing Nihal Sarin to fight against that threat. He does attack the queen, which feels a little vulnerable. Magnus, did he rush through with that square?
Magnus rushing. Nihal closed his eyes there, leant back. I don't know if he was taking a short nap, whether he was meditating. That is a feature of some of the modern generation. This meditative state they go into, just stay in this kind of trance, just remove the nerves to stay focused, stay present. I will mention there is a bit of a dynamic here. Nihal, compared to some of his compatriots, like Gukesh, like Pragnananda, like Erigaisi, hasn't faced Magnus that many times. I was looking through games between these two. They are few and far between, mostly in speed chess. So some experience there, but often you need to have experienced those devastating losses. You need to kind of believe with a first win against Magnus that you can do it again. But Nihal, he's doing this for the first time.
First little bit of a think there from Magnus, easing into that time advantage, which was up to about 2 minutes, now shrunk to closer to 1 minute. Queen h5 played, but continuing to hunt with the bishop moving back to the back rank.
He does, and he makes that move pretty quickly. And to your point about, you know, his teammates, his compatriot, I will point out that Nihal Sarin was the first Indian prodigy to break out into the scene. But his training, his method of improving at chess has been drastically different compared to Arjun, Gukesh and Pragnananda, where he focused so much on these fast play formats, on playing online a lot, and sort of mastered that, especially during the pandemic, which is why we see him with these incredible performances when it comes to speed play. Somehow in the classical, it always felt like he felt a little short. He felt just a little bit away from the rest of them who focused on the classical format, and that's something I think Nihal is actively working on now. But so far, his biggest strength has been speed chess.
And it's paying off so far in this game. The Black Knight has been happily gobbling up, like Pac-Man, all of Magnus's pawns. Suddenly it's Nihal. He started the game a pawn up. He gave a pawn back. He gave another pawn. He was a pawn down. Now he's a pawn up again. And for now, Magnus has some compensation due to active pieces. But Nihal, great start to this game. I've been teammates with him before in some leagues in the Spanish league. Literally at dinner, he's playing bullet chess on his phone. He's team meetings, playing bullet chess on his phone. 2 minutes before a classical game, playing bullet chess on his phone.
That's why he's so quick. If you can do that on a touch screen, like a mouse, you can be really precise. Doing that on touch screen is insane.
His speed is absolutely nuts. There's a reason he's called the Flash.
The Flash. I'm learning that for the first time. And will it be a flash in the pan? Will it be a win for Nihal Sarin this match? First, he moves his queen off some vulnerable squares. The white knight leaps forward. Magnus is trying his best to create threats, create some action going, but that can be guarded by the black bishop, the weak e6 pawn. Still looking very healthy for Nihal. It feels like he's playing from a position of strength. If he wants to, he can just lock this game down, maybe return a pawn to force a draw. But
it almost
maybe more
feels
ambitious.
like his game plan here is, right, let's see if we can swap off all the pieces and play against the pawns on a3 and c5 and just play against those weaknesses long term. If I get a win, great. If it ends up being a draw, it's going to be uncomfortable for Magnus. It certainly feels like Nihal here in game number 1, at least for now, has the upper hand. But he has the upper hand on the board, and he's back to 2 minutes down on the clock.
But he's doing really well on the board. You know, he's up that pawn. Right now, attack comes in with a big threat, this last knight move. Knight takes pawn would be a fork on the queen and the rook. Expecting Nihal to find a way to defend it, to use one of the pieces. He could think about improving the position of his bishop, to use that as a defensive piece, or maybe even a potential rook lift to keep that pawn defended. But to your point, John, whichever he decides, he needs to do it fast.
Yep.
He goes with the bishop, connecting the two rooks.
Great move, great start. Magnus quick with a response, and I know Magnus isn't necessarily known as the speediest these days, but he used to be great at bullet himself, and I think at least in the middle of a game, he's one of the fastest. He trusts his instincts. He knows what type of endgame he might be wanting to head for. He's very practical, Magnus Carlsen. So getting him down to the 30-second versus 30-second mark, that is already a huge achievement and not easy to accomplish. Nihal, definitely with 4 minutes left, needs to keep this pace going.
He does keep the pace on the board, right? That last move is also hinting at that e-pawn moving forward.
For sure.
It's a 4 versus 3 on the right flank for Nihal. And that advantage is only as strong as the mobility of the pawns at the center of the board. So it's something that Magnus has to worry about. Once that pawn gets to e4, it's going to shut off the light squared bishop as well. Magnus Carlsen improves the position of the king. Are we going to see the pawn advance?
Ooh, very subtle play. I'm going to say very professional from both sides. The king positions not entirely comfortable, so they get ready. Just kind of keeping each other guessing. I think your move's going to land very, very shortly, Tanya. The black e-pawn is about to push, but Magnus might want to either brace for impact and get ready to reply, or start the action himself before Nihal is ready.
Magnus Carlsen, he's on a thing. The clock's getting closer now. Magnus down a pawn, but a lot of piece dynamics, especially on the left flank. Trying to think about how he can make the most of it.
Plenty of tempting moves. One move would be knight to b5, the white knight jumping forward to attack the black queen. You could think about pushing your c-pawn forward. Some calculation involved there. Maybe another temporary pawn sacrifice just to open lines for the white rooks. For now, the white queen struggling to be improved. The white bishop also struggling to move. Feels like a knight or pawn move incoming from Magnus Carlsen, but a bit of indecision, time advantage drifting away.
I'm glancing at why Magnus is spending that much time in this position, and this is definitely not my own, but it turns out bishop takes pawn is on in this position, because combining that with your idea of pushing the pawn forward, David, you can take the pawn first and then fork. Magnus has decided against it, but he was probably doing some calculation on whether that line was any good for him.
That would have been very, very flashy. We could have seen a bishop takes pawn move followed by white pushing forward with c6. And instead, there was a little trade in the position. And let's show that possibility that Magnus probably spent 2 minutes calculating there. He could have played bishop takes b7, and if the black knight recaptures c6 here, would have regained the material, potentially with interest. I think the black bishop would be forced back, and after some trades here, we could see the white rook coming in, maybe a queen trade as well, and an endgame that Magnus possibly didn't like. The black bishop would have been very strong in the center of the board, even though he might have ended up with level material. Magnus instead, if we go back to the game now, keeping queens on, keeping a bit more tension, and at least now it does feel like a 3-result game. The other one might have been closer to a draw, but not what Magnus wants.
And what's great as well is that you know, inside the head of Magnus Carlsen, he would have just looked at everything we just saw on the analysis board in his head and then tried to evaluate what does the end game look like here. He's probably gone a couple moves beyond what we even saw with the help of the analysis board before making that decision. So it's those moments where Magnus Carlsen chooses to use the majority of his time. He is still 1 minute and 45 seconds up on the clock, it should be said, and that's going to start becoming really important in a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. The clock is going to be a big factor in this one because the position is pretty complicated. You know, Nihal, he has that extra pawn, but look at the knight at the edge of the board. You know, it doesn't have a very bright future, at least not anytime soon. It's tied down to the defend of the b7 pawn. You can't go back with it so easily. Magnus, both rooks on open line, the bishop on b7 unchallenged for the rest of the game, doing a beautiful job as well. this is definitely enough compensation and peace activity for that pawn.
Definitely. Full compensation for Magnus Carlsen. NIHAL not looking too comfortable. Also in the back of your mind, if you haven't faced Magnus Carlsen too many times, you know his reputation. You know in an endgame, he's going to take advantage of any slip you might make. And already, rook takes rook incoming. Will Magnus regain the pawn now with his queen? There are some fancy tactics. The black rook could potentially come down to the first rank with a check on the white king, but Magnus has it all under control. Will he restore the material balance? NIHAL with 2 minutes. We're going to see all of his speed skills on show, surely now.
And the b7 pawn does fall. I will tell you the one good part about not facing Magnus too many times is that perhaps you haven't lost to him too many times. So that trauma does not exist. We'll see which one plays out here. Bishop to f1, defending the check. Now white unpins. Magnus getting ready to activate that bishop. Rook takes pawn. Is that a move that could pick up a pawn? A very key pawn in the position for NIHAL.
Yeah, he can go for it now. Maybe he's just hesitating, scared of being pinned by the white rook. Should still all be under control for NIHAL Serene, but he brings his king towards the center instead. Another very logical move.
He needs to start doing this faster, though. I mean, we have seen this time and time again from Magnus. He's very good at grinding out positions that look like they're drawn, and like we said on day one, the position's drawn until it's not. And that's all well and good if you haven't played Magnus that much before. But when he's also got over double your time, you just need to get a move on. And NIHAL Serene, he might be a speed demon, but we need to really, really move.
Big threat on the board. The black knight was about to be pinned by the white rook, so it leaps away instead. Magnus now can go munching. He can grab the black a7 pawn, restore the material balance. Currently NIHAL a pawn up, but instead flicks in a check first. And now asking NIHAL, big question. Do you step towards the center with the black king? Looks like you might get mated if you do so, but instead he goes back to the wing, back to the flank, and Magnus now some quick moves, applying some pressure. That white a-pawn, so dangerous potentially.
And that is the hardest pawn for a knight to counter. It's the one on the flank lines, A or H. That a4 passer gives Magnus a strong edge to play for in the position. NIHAL trying to set up his own counterplay, but with the black king cut off on the side of the board, I'm wondering if this is got all the ingredients for a making of another Magnus Carlsen classic.
And watch out, there's a checkmate in 2 threatened by Magnus Carlsen. The white bishop was threatening to come back, force the black king to the back rank with the white rook delivering the killer blow. This last move given a question mark, but fully understandable by NIHAL Serene, giving the black king some breathing space. And right now he's down a pawn, but the black rook, black knight also eyeing up a pawn of their own.
But this is where Magnus has the opportunity to turn a screw. He smells the opportunity, actually makes the wrong move in this scenario, but crucially, it's 3.5 minutes, plays 1 minute. There will more likely than not be additional chances for Magnus here, even if this one is a missed one.
I don't believe this is going to be a missed one for Magnus. He's up on the position because of that A passer, even if NIHAL wins the F2 pawn, but it's the clock. You know,
Exactly.
48 seconds, NIHAL's a beast, he's flash, but with Magnus having 3.5 minutes, that's a big time deficit.
Huge moment. Magnus can win on the spot, but he has to find a narrow path. He has to start with a rook check, forcing the black king onto a light square. Then the white bishop would have come and checked the black rook. Instead, he misses it, Magnus Carlsen. He's going to give back his pawn. It's a 2 versus 2 situation here on the king side in terms of pawns. Dead, drawn endgame, but no time for NIHAL.
Bishop takes knight, get the bishop and the knight off the board. Why is he thinking? Rook takes pawn has been played. For Magnus, he has to run away with the knight.
Magnus, is he wondering whether to try and flag NIHAL Serene here? He could offer a draw as well. This is a dead level endgame, but Magnus with that moral decision to play on time against his younger rival here, or to keep going, and wow, he gives up a pawn, Magnus Carlsen, in his quest to try and win this game.
He's playing to flag. He's down a pawn. He's going to try and create chances against NIHAL's king. NIHAL, he's done everything in his life to show his speed skill. Right now, this is where it all has to come together if he has to survive this.
It's crazy. Magnus missed the rook h7 check, bishop f7 check, and taking the black rook earlier. He would have forced a bishop versus knight endgame. Now it's a dead, drawn rook endgame. It's all about the clock. NIHAL Serene, 30 seconds. He's going to show us why he has this reputation as the Flash.
2.5 minutes for Magnus. It's a 2-minute advantage. He's running through. NIHAL with a smile on his face. He knows that Magnus is coming for his clock.
Wow, and the pre-moves will begin. You cannot trade rooks as Magnus Carlsen. That would guide the game towards a draw, and we repeat the position. Magnus agreeing to the draw reluctantly there, maybe not realizing it was a position NIHAL escapes.
Draw.
Opportunities there for Magnus Carlsen to turn the screw.
Black पे draw.
Game number 1 ends peacefully. This is excellent tension we're building in this match.
टाइम मैनेजमेंट में हम लोग को समझता है लेकिन वो उसका लेट गेम ही है ऐसा उसका लेट गेम ही है फट 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 मारता है वेल प्लेड रे ब्लैक के साथ अच्छा रिजल्ट है
Fantastic start to the showdown we've got in an end game with 28 seconds to survive against the good, against the world number 1. It's not an easy task, and Nihal shows that he's up for it. He's up for this fight. With the black pieces, getting a draw in game 1 has to be feeling good for the Indian prodigy.
That was a dream result for NIHAL Serena, especially the way it happened. Very uncharacteristic from Magnus to miss some winning moves there in the endgame. He got won by force. It wasn't even that tricky. Magnus had 3+ minutes on his clock. Magnus was actually playing on the clock, maybe not being so objective in his decision making. Very odd.
GG's bhai, GG's Vivek.
Actually have thought the other way around, NIHAL applying pressure on the clock.
JMD guys, JMD in the chat. JMD in the chat guys, JMD in the chat. जिस भी भगवान को प्रे करते हो याद करो आज सबको सारा एनर्जी टुवर्ड्स निहाल सरीन.
He actually played quite quickly.
It's also the feeling, right? You want to play on your opponent's clock. You don't want to give them those extra seconds to be able to think. So you rush through and you miss that one window of opportunity that you had.
Like करो भाई स्ट्रीम को जितने भी लोग देख रहे हो like भी करो.
Perhaps the storyline. And Magnus just takes a little bit of time to warm up. You know, if you have to strike against him, you need to do it in the first half of this match. Once Magnus finds his rhythm, once he finds the liquid flow, that's going to be tough.
Chalo.
Nice there, Tanya. And yeah, Magnus, he himself would describe that missed opportunity as sloppy. He is his own harshest critic, Magnus Carlsen. He knows that was a missed opportunity, but he's also a master at resetting. And here we see a slightly offbeat D4 opening as Black sets up with a Fianchetto, now trying to strike at the white center. I guess we would call this a Torre attack with White's Dark Squared Bishop coming out with an early pin. But yeah, NIHAL Serene, he is known to surprise his opponents early, play these offbeat lines and hope to absorb pressure and use his clock skills later. I'm going to say that Magnus, maybe it's just match strategy beforehand. He knows the clock is NIHAL's biggest weapon. Maybe in his mind, he's like, just blitz. Keep that 3-minute buffer.
It's also a little bit of a test as well, right? I think it not difficult to see that a lot of people say NIHAL's speed is his greatest asset. So in game number 1, it makes sense for Magnus to be probing, to be testing, to see how quickly can you actually move, can you keep up with the speed that I've got in the tank. And psychologically, maybe that's advantage Magnus for the match, because NIHAL's now realizing, okay, I can move really quickly when I need to. I showed that at the end of that last game. That was fantastic. But I need to get into better positions over the board before that becomes necessary.
And although he allowed that kind of accidental repetition at the end there, Magnus, do you think, Tanya, he would have been able to flag NIHAL Serene with just rook and pawn versus rook and pawn? NIHAL had just over 30 seconds. Do you think it would have been possible for Magnus if he'd been a bit quicker, a bit wilier on the clock?
You know, who knows? It's a really tough call because there's also the 50-move rule. At some point, there would have had to be a trade. But 28 seconds, I mean, to survive that, NIHAL would really have to be on his A game. Hard to predict, but if I had to, you know what? I'm going to say NIHAL would have survived it.
And he did survive in his own way in the end. As we see this position, not too much has changed, just one set of pawn trades. Black is camped out on his first 3 ranks. And very, very solid. Hard for White to step forward. No pawn breaks imminent for either side. It's a maneuvering battle.
And you know, who knows? We might be in a similar situation at some point in this match. It's just getting started. We're just in game 2. It's a best of 4. We might have some more of those crazy scrambles.
Bring them on.
And we do have to ask the question as well. Who do the crazy scrambles favor? Before the start of the match, we were thinking Magnus Carlsen, accuracy over the board. NIHAL Serene, when the time trouble starts, extremely quick. We've been given pause for thought. I wonder if it's nerves or something similar, where NIHAL Serene allowed Magnus Carlsen to get up to 2 minutes extra on the clock. And this was in the middle game, long before the time scrambles took place. So if he's able to manage that and then bring Carlsen into an end game where it's actually Magnus who's being pressured on the clock, that would be really interesting to watch.
Time scrambles, I would say, David, favor NIHAL Serene. As long as the clocks are close, as long as it's a tight battle.
Sure,
you know, not Magnus running away with 2.5 minutes and NIHAL playing with a minute on the clock.
Sure.
Also depends on the kind of position. But if it becomes sort of a level position and both players under 1 minute, it's anyone's game. I'd even give NIHAL as a favorite in that one.
Agreed. If it's a level middle game, 30 seconds versus 30 seconds, I think NIHAL really fancies his chances. But Magnus will try not to let that happen. A quick start to this game from NIHAL Serene. That's a good thing. These system types of openings, like the Torre attack, you put your bishop on the same square every time, put your pawns on the same square, develop your other minor pieces to logical posts. This lends itself to speed. You can pretty much pre-move your first 17 turns, as NIHAL has done here. It's cost him a little bit of time, just over a minute and a half. But ultimately, you have no weaknesses. Very difficult for the opponent to find a plan. You bide your time for later.
And I've seen NIHAL do these openings, these unorthodox, slightly offbeat lines, so often in speed chess. And the reasons that you explain, it's exactly that, right? You need to know the plans. You need to know where to put the pieces. It's not as much about direct lines here.
Sure.
So you can get those first few moves in super quickly and then just ask your opponent, do you know how to proceed in this position with black, especially when you're slightly cagey? Not a single pawn for Magnus beyond the third rank.
Well, let's spend a couple of moments talking about that right now. If we could pick a couple of pieces for their positions to improve, where do we want to...
Repetition? Is this the moment?
Already?
Magnus is offering a silent draw here. If the white knight goes back where it came from to attack the black d6 pawn, the black queen would then likely move. And NIHAL says no, that would have been the third time they'd reached that position. It would have been a draw. NIHAL, brave move playing on.
So gutsy by NIHAL, you know, in a level position. Even the clock time similar. NIHAL says, I want a game. Because when you're playing against Magnus Carlsen, you have the white pieces. You need to make the most of every single opportunity. Maximize the chance of playing white. And NIHAL knows he's got the space advantage. He knows he's got those extra seconds on the clock. It's game on. A bold decision, Magnus amused.
Magnus smiling there. He's like, please respect me in future, kid. But I think Magnus enjoys being challenged. He loves seeing these young players take him on headfirst.
It's maybe Magnus was aiming for psychological torture, but I feel like NIHAL Serene has gone, no, absolutely no way. I want to take the bull by the horns here. Absolutely love to see it. So now, in this position, where do we want the pieces to be on the board? Let's talk about key themes and ideas for white and black. What are we looking to accomplish, say, 5 to 10 moves from now?
The white pieces need to improve. I think for black, it's clearer to see which pieces aren't well placed. I'm going to point out the black queen, stuck in the back rank, not looking great. The black rook in the corner, therefore a bit hemmed in. The white knights look like they have a lot of potential. First, the white bishop is going round, maybe to the b3 square. The white knight's coming forward. Watch out, the black queen in the meantime, making a bit of a battery. No threat yet. The g2 square is defended by the white knight. But ultimately, it is about jockeying for position right now. To my eyes, it looks maybe easier to play with black, but white, great centralization so far.
And he makes another bishop retreating move right now, and Magnus continues to improve the position of his pieces. You know, when you've maximized the placement of your pieces, then you start thinking about pawn breaks. For Magnus, one of them does exist. It's a thematic idea in such structures to push the b pawn. b5 is something that's always in the air to try to gain some squares, to try to liquidate, sort of a minority attack, a 2 versus 3 on the left flank. Sure. You try to target it with that b pawn.
So it's, look, easier to see black's position improving here. And you can see with the bishop to g7, black's pieces compared to a few moves ago already looking like the pieces are a little bit more coordinated. Where do white's pieces want to be? Like, what's NIHAL aiming for here?
Well, he's doing the same, right? Get the rook to those central lines. He's also inviting Magnus to potentially push the e-pawn forward, hitting the knight, which would allow the knight to a beautiful spot on d4, attacking the black queen as well. Okay. So trying to provoke that to happen. The knight and the bishop eyeing the e5 pawn, sort of paralyze Magnus's knight and rook to defend that pawn as well. The white bishop on b3 will be nicely lined up on a beautiful diagonal, eyeing that tender spot of f7. I think he's done this well. You know, he can think about doubling up on the D line. Again, it looks like the kind of position that's easier to improve for white than for Magnus.
Yeah, and it's a low responsibility type of position for white. You're not really risking too much, at least not yet. You're saying to black, yes, your pawn in the center, that black e-pawn, that's the key to the position. That's vulnerable for now. A lot of my pieces are lined up against it. You don't really want to move it forward. That white bishop looking good too. So it's kind of that type of position where you're just waiting, saying, it's your responsibility to do something here, Magnus, and that's going to cost you time on the clock.
You know, one of the hardest things for me when I used to play would be that when I've declined a repetition from my opponent, that would just play at the back of my mind. And here, you know, at a completely different level and a different stage, Nihal Serene declined a repetition by Magnus just a few moves ago. How easy is it for a player to forget about that and just focus rather than thinking, what should I have just pulled the brakes, bailed out, you know, gotten closer to the Armageddon?
Yeah, I think in a long game, you would have more time for this to just clutter your mind and for that thought to go round and round. But luckily, you don't have too much time on the clock. I think the players will just be calculating here. NIHAL spending a few seconds now to come up with a plan.
Also, to be fair, when declining the repetition, we got more of an emotional reaction from Magnus than we did from NIHAL. I think it strengthened his determination. It galvanized his will a little bit, whereas Magnus was thinking, oh, okay, excellent. This kid's not to be intimidated.
Yeah.
Great. Now let's do the job over the board.
And that's been the fascinating part about this younger generation, right? That they just don't let Magnus Carlsen's name get to their head. They have immense respect for Magnus. They've grown up idolizing him, but they all say, when you face him on the board, you need to forget his name.
You need to, otherwise he'll be world #1 for the next 40 years. You absolutely have to. That's, I think playing without fear is the traditional mentality of a challenger to the throne. And if you imagine what's potentially at stake, NIHAL Serene is only looking at what's on the board. But if you think about it this way, a match win against Magnus Carlsen at the Esports World Cup, that is an incredible feather to have in your cap. And he does have the opportunity to do that right now.
That would be by far the highlight of his career, NIHAL, and also by far the longest think of the game from him. But long think, wrong think. He's traded off a set of pieces. But look at this. The white knight now kicked to a bad square. The knight has no central squares to jump to. You cannot block the d-file because the white rook needed to defend its bishop. But now we see a trade. That white knight sidelined, looking horrible, almost trapped. That was a horrible decision from NIHAL Serene. He was overthinking it.
And he took about 2 minutes, like you said, to make that move and played the worst one of the game so far. Magnus now, all his pieces, slowly and surely coming forward, now challenging the D line as well. That knight's headed to the D3 square. Knight D3, block the connection between the two rooks, win the open line.
He was so patient for so long, NIHAL Serene. He was playing so well for so long. He just needed to sit, wait, and ask Magnus what you're doing. Instead, he gave Magnus this clear path forward, this clear plan, and look at the Black Knight jumping.
Wow.
Rook trade offered, but you cannot get greedy here with white. Let's show what might happen if the rooks get traded, and if the white queen tries to grab a pawn in the center now, we would see the game end abruptly after the queen swoops in, the white king sliding into the corner, and now the black queen can move pretty much anywhere. And the knight check on f2 is going to be deadly. A royal fork hitting the white king in the corner, the white queen, white rook. This would be game over, since the white rook cannot take the knight due to a check on the back rank. We're actually headed in this direction. NIHAL Serene cannot allow the black queen in to his position.
Oof, tactics now, and you're down on the clock, and you sort of walked into it, and that's a frustrating thought for NIHAL Serene right now. You know, again, the flashbacks of a declined draw offer, and then taking this long thing and landing yourself up in this position. He's on the defense. It's still far from over, but one thing's for sure. You compare Black's knight to the white knight, Black knight the winner. The bishop on g7, eyeing those two pawns whenever b4 happens and there's a weakness created. Stronger than the white bishop. The black rook more active. The black queen, super strong, eyeing that f2 spot. And b4 on the board immediately.
This is the danger, right? Magnus didn't just see the weakness, but he executed it so quickly. NIHAL Serene actually did a great job, credit to him, in the first half of this game so far, managing his time, but that long think into what might be the game-changing move, maybe even the game-ending move, really cost him so much. Magnus is turning the screw. All of these follow-up moves by Magnus Carlsen, they're happening near instantaneously.
And there we see a quick pawn trade. Magnus, at least now, has to take a timeout to defend his central pawn. There we go. NIHAL has set up a nice defense. The white bishop holds some important pawns. The white knight nearby, now retreating. Magnus is going to go a pawn up. That white c-pawn is doomed. Short term, long term, there we go. It does drop immediately, but it's all pawns on one side of the board. None of those pawns are passed. NIHAL still has some defensive chances, but the clock is the main concern.
Magnus has famously in the past said he does not believe in fortresses. Can NIHAL Serene prove him wrong? Can he set up a fortress down upon in this position?
Big question. I think that's the key question. It's going to be so tough. He needs some simplifications here. He needs queens off the board. We need knights, rooks, something off the board to make it easier to pre-move. The reason he was able to hold the previous game with 28 seconds on his clock, it was just rooks and pawns.
Yep.
But the complication here, the complexity of this whole army still remaining, not going to be easy.
I think that no matter which side of the argument you're on whether fortresses can exist or not, I think they can be broken down if you don't have enough time to consider the perfect move in response to every attacking move. And we're getting to 4 minutes versus 2 minutes. There's an argument to say NIHAL Surin needs a fortress, but unfortunately, I think the clock's going to end up being the key to barreling down the front door, even if one exists.
Yeah, and look at Magnus, his last move, given an exclamation mark, it's such an innocuous looking move, but Magnus just keeps the tension, and there the white queen gives way. Now the black bishop no longer pinned, expecting that one to move, and again, it cost NIHAL there 34 seconds. He doesn't have too much time left. 34 seconds to play what is a mistake.
And with beast formation that Magnus has, the knight, the bishop, the queen, so much into Nihal's camp, you know, that extra pawn, Nihal will have to burn time on every single move. And that's the problem in this position. There are no easy moves. There are no fast moves for white.
I think Magnus is using his time here to basically work out which of these options will either force Nihal into at least a 30-second think or force him to make a mistake almost immediately. The bishop goes back. Bishop e5 now played on the board.
Inviting some trades there of the minor pieces. If white was to capture the knight, Magnus intends on capturing the bishop and get that stronghold on the d3 square. Put a strong passer. Get your pawn moving forward. Magnus putting immense pressure on Nihal's knight.
Great time usage there from Magnus Carlsen. Yes, he invested around 40 seconds, but he slowed Nihal down. For every 40 seconds Magnus has, Nihal has to play a lot quicker. Wow, he just waits with his king. There are some pins. The black knight cannot move since the black queen would be vulnerable, so just maintaining the position. But again, Nihal spending 30 seconds. Magnus needs to keep trying to create those long thinks from his opponent. Nihal needs to speed up meanwhile.
Well, now it's a big threat. Knight takes knight, attacking the white queen is threatened as Magnus unpins his own queen in the position, again forcing Nihal to come up with a defensive strategy. And you know, you can find those defenses once, twice, but can you do it 10 times against the world number one?
And that's exactly the kind of thing that Magnus is so good at doing. Ask a question? Cool, great. Glad you found the answer. I'm going to ask you 20 more. And the moment you get one of those answers wrong is the moment I pounce and take the game from you. NIHAL Surin now under 1 minute on the clock. Magnus Carlsen aiming to turn the screw.
Well, big decision. He gives up his rook for a knight. There is some tension along the e-file. So if Magnus wants to take that rook back with his pawn, he has to calculate well. It's very tempting. That pawn is so close to landing as a promotion, as a new queen. But Magnus, he's calculating here. He takes with the rook instead, taking with the pawn, according to the computer, was winning. Now, again, it's a a rook for knight advantage for Magnus, but still some work to do.
It is a winning advantage and exchange up for Magnus, but again, the question, can Nihal Surin set up a fortress as his clock goes red? He's playing on the dark squares, trying to set up that battery. The bishop lands on that central square. e5 is the big idea, threatening checkmates to Magnus Carlsen's king. How is Magnus stopping bishop e5?
Ooh, he offers a queen trade, Magnus Carlsen. If the queens do come off, the game will go on a lot longer, but only black can win. I think that is objectively a winning position too. Nihal deciding there's no other way. The white king otherwise would have been caught in the mating net. Here we're going to see the technical phase with the black king trying to get into the battle.
This is tense. This feels like a repeat of game one. Magnus Carlsen winning. Nihal Surin, 39 seconds on the clock, needs a miracle to save this one. It happened in game one. Will it happen again?
Grind is beginning. Magnus could make this last another 30 moves, but he's just looking for that one additional critical mistake. It feels like we've got a lot of nails in the coffin. We now need the final one.
Yeah, the black king is coming. The black king is making its way slowly towards the white pawn on f3. You need to put your pieces on light squares. When you're playing against a bishop in an endgame like this, when it comes down to time flagging, keep your pieces on the opposite color complex. But look at this. Nihal's trying to set up a blockade on the dark squares so the black king cannot pass. But it's a matter of time. White is running out of moves. The black pieces are almost optimized. Black is threatening to win the white pawn on h4, and now the black king can cross over. It's coming. It's winning for Magnus Carlsen.
And there he blocks that bishop diagonal. The black king about to move forward. Magnus about to win this game as the king gets closer to that white pawn. Nihal Surin is going to resign. Don't take that bishop. That would have been a stalemate.
And there we go, Magnus Carlsen wins by resignation. A small joke there, a stalemate trap, but Magnus dodges it, takes the win.
And Magnus Carlsen, the world #1, asking questions of Nihal Sarin here, saying, you're quick with no time on the clock, but are you quick enough to find the thread that you have
With
to
that,
push through that needle
Magnus
over the
निकाल
board?
लिया
On this
एक
occasion, he was
1-0
found wanting, and Magnus
कितना
Carlsen
1.5 होगा ना
goes
उसका स्कोर अभी
1.5 to a half up
1.5 and 0.5. अब हम लोग वापस से ब्लैक खेलने वाले हैं. Damn bro.
None were to be built here today by Nihal Sarin. A very difficult endgame to hold. Magnus on top from the very start, winning material and then finishing it off in style in this endgame. Flawless conversion.
Flawless conversion. Magnus, again, that strategy of staying 2-3 minutes ahead of Nihal, it's proved so effective. And Nihal, nice to see him with a bit of humor there towards the end of the game. Try to set up that stalemate.
Third match.
Ineffective in the end. You just can't fight.
Third match, guys. Third match. कोई बात नहीं.
I would say that Nihal Sarin did a good job of not letting Magnus Carlsen get ahead on the clock until that mid-game period where he went into that deep think and ended up basically committing a blunder. So I want to give him credit, because compared to the start of the match, he actually did a fantastic job there. What changed?
Yeah, it was Nihal Sarin, I think, just overthinking things. He was so smooth, but when it came to the critical moment, panicking, that keenness to simplify came back to haunt him.
So there we go. The first 2 games are under our belt. Magnus Carlsen ahead 1.5 to a half. We're going to a quick break, folks, and when we come back, it's game number 3 of this quarterfinal chess at the Esports World Cup.
चलो let's see कैसा जाता है थर्ड मैच. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट मैच.
After a draw in the opening game, Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura has won games 2 and 4 to get past Levon Aronian by a score of 2.5 to 1.5. What was the biggest difference in the match today, Hikaru?
We're walking? Okay, sure. I mean, I think the difference is that I had this built-in advantage from the get-go, that if we get low on time, I should be a big favor. And I think Levon definitely in the first game felt that pressure. I mean this horrible blunder King D4, which really messed everything up. But I won the second game. Third game was choppy, and I lost. But I think I just kept my nerves together, and I kept trying to play fast, put pressure on the clock, and ultimately Levon cracked.
And finally, you did hang your rook, king and rook versus king rook, but I didn't see an expression out of your face. How did you get past that so quickly?
I mean, you have to move. He has 4 seconds. If you let him think, he's going to find the checkmate. And I think, if I had made that blunder against Alireza or Magnus, maybe I'm not sure about Magnus, but definitely Alireza, I would have lost that. So just have to be a little bit more careful, but I think overall the match was mostly in my favor, so I'm pretty pleased with the result.
Well,
4 games at total.
We could have a Team Falcons versus Team Falcons final. We will see, but Hikaru might also.
अच्छा नेपो के अगेंस्ट अर्जुन एरेगासी भी लीड पे.
Magnus's game. It should
अच्छा
also
जीती
be
गया.
said, this ends the magical run of.
बाप रे.
Ronian. He's had quite a July, but it is the 31st of July. The month ends, and Levon's magical run also ends.
मैग्नस और अपने से यहाँ से जो जीतेगा वो डायरेक्ट फाइटन से लास्ट हमारा मैच ही
हाँ डेंजर है भाई. मैग्नस ब्लैक पीस से जीता. सोचो. क्या ऐसा आगे का सोच के खेलते हैं? "45 seconds." There is only 3 best player in chess currently: Magnus, Drunk Magnus, Female Magnus. क्या बोलते हो भाई? कोई नहीं, he'll give his level best, guys, don't worry.
Match point. Magnus Carlsen
Hello.
leading 1.5, 2.5 in this quarterfinal.
Hello.
If he manages to score the victory with the white pieces in this next game, he could end the quarterfinal right here, right now, and add NIHAL Serene's key to his collection. Can he do it?
तो अभी मेरे को एक बात बताओ, अगर वापस से चेस ड्रॉ होता है, अगर
both games close
अरे
to
मैं
victory,
मम्मी को
gets it done on the second one. Of
WhatsApp
course,
call
Magnus
कर रहा हूँ।
Carlsen can do it, but the big question: can Nihal do it? Can he try to take it, do that fourth game, and what does he need to do to switch things up?
A lot depends on NIHAL's strategy as well. Here we see him, eyes closed, meditating, maybe trying to visualize how he can claw his way back into this match. But if he goes all out with the black pieces, Magnus will get his chance. It's very difficult.
Draw हुआ
there.
तो
If we
last
see
match
NIHAL
decider
maybe try to shore
हैं?
up his defenses, lock this game down,
अच्छा
escape with a
जीत
draw,
हाँ बोलिए
take his chances in the final game with white, then we might
चल
see
रहा है
Magnus
अभी तो वो
try to
मैग्नस
just
मतलब जो
minimize the
सामने है वो
risk,
लीड
and
पर
there
है
already the first face from Magnus as we see the first surprise as well.
You know, Magnus loves a challenge. We saw
मतलब
that with that
ला-
smile
दो
on his
गेम बचे
face
हैं
when
वैसे तो
Nihal declined the repetition. I think he'd want a game on. He's not going to just
3
give
हो गए
Nihal that
तीसरा चल
shutdown
रहा है अभी 2 हो
opportunity
गए
because that
एक
definitely,
ड्रॉ
like
हुआ
you
और
said,
एक
David,
हारे हैं
has to
अभी
be Nihal's
फिलहाल
strat here, right? You try to just play it safe with
चलो
black,
देखते हैं
get that draw in, final game, go all out, all guns blazing on Magnus with white. I think Magnus will play to try to wrap this up in 3. That's his style.
I've revised my what am I looking out for in the middle game. Previously, I said, okay, it's all about whether or not NIHAL Serene can get that clock advantage on Magnus Carlsen. I'm gonna change that based on what we saw in the last game. I'm going to say it depends on what both players do with their first deep think. Because if we don't see an amazing advantage or maybe a really, really cool complex continuation that puts Magnus in the tank, then that deep think would have been for naught. So I want to understand when NIHAL is choosing his moments to use that time and whether he can do that effectively here against Magnus. He's going to need to do that if he wants to win this game.
100%. He'll need to invest that time wisely, need to not fall behind on the clock. Good start to this game by NIHAL. He's 1 minute up already.
Yeah.
Quick surprise here in the Queen's Gambit declined. We saw a trade of pawns. Magnus is the king of this pawn structure. He normally prefers it, though, from the black side. We call this the Carlsbad pawn structure, with things locked, at least short-term. No real pawn breaks in the middle of the board. And black's light squared bishop coming out. Good news for NIHAL. Looks like a very healthy, stable position to build from.
That's one of the aims if you're playing black in this Queen's Gambit declined Carlsbad structure, right? You want your bishop on the light squares, but Magnus with his last move is potentially hinting at a g4 to develop to Fianchetto his own bishop and get aggressive. That could be the other way to get the pieces out. Instead, he targets the bishop with a knight and wins it. He's got an unchallenged bishop. That is the first imbalance of the game.
First, maybe of many, but for now, NIHAL has to decide how to develop his pieces. We see bishop for knight trade. Black has doubled pawns. That comes with pros and cons. Black's pawns on the g-file mean that the h-file and the rook there is open. So both sides probably reluctant to castle on that flank until a decision is made by the opponent here.
Yeah, it feels like who's going to blink first. Actually, this is the best moment for the first castle graphic as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking here going, who's going to blink first in this position? Can you go kingside? Well, actually, opposite side castling and launching a big attack is possible if you miscalculate this.
let's predict. Which way is the Black King going? It's Nihal Sarin's move right now.
I predict the Black King goes the exact same way as Magnus's King goes.
Yeah.
He goes to the left, Magnus, and Nihal does it first. He gets it on the queen side.
I thought there was a chance maybe that Magnus would react to Nihal and choose to go the opposite side, but no such luck. If it was Black, Black would absolutely respond to White, but it's interesting that Black castled first, Magnus still responded in kind.
Yeah, I think normally, especially for Nihal, who's behind in the match, you kind of want to wait to see where your opponent's king goes. Magnus, because he wants safety first, he's ahead. He's happy to castle on the same flank. Nihal ideally would have gone the other way. No matter where Magnus has gone with his king, he would castle the opposite flank. But ultimately, there were no remaining useful moves. He had to commit. And here we see, again, the V pawn structure, or White's pawns all on dark squares from the center to that right flank. And the Black Knight sitting pretty on G4 for now.
And it's going to be now about finding plans, right? You've placed your miners where they are. The knight on g4 looking good. The queen on d6 centralized. One of your rook on the open lines. On the e-file center of the board, the rook on h8. Guess what? It's already developed from its starting position. You don't need to move it any further. And if you're Nihal, you need to find a way to either shut down this action, to make sure things remain under control, or create some dynamics. I think he's going to go for the former. He's not going to try to push too many pawns. He's not going to provoke weaknesses. If the opportunities come, he'll take it, but he won't take the fight to Magnus.
But yeah, because this isn't a must-win game here, remember. If we draw this game, Nihal Sarin will still go to a game number 4. It is still possible for him to take this tie to Armageddon or even win it in game number 4.
It's a must-not-lose game.
It's a must-not-lose game, exactly. So we'll see what happens there. The base of the V is being attacked right now. And some questions are being asked of Magnus. They're saying, look, there are ways for you to swap off that knight, but do you really want to use the light squared bishop to do it? It's such a powerful piece for White right now. I don't think that sort of trade is beneficial.
And a bit of a cool trick here from Magnus Carlsen. He's attacking the Black Knight, and if this knight moves and swoops in to capture a pawn, it will find itself pinned by one of the White rooks. The Black Queen will be behind it. That would lose a piece for Nihal Sarin, meaning he needs to either retreat the knight or sidestep with his own queen to defend it. That's a nice little kind of two-move tactic from Magnus Carlsen. Chess is all about these combinations, and that's a nice, effective one.
It's a two-move tactic that's bought him 30 seconds on the clock as well. That wasn't the longest think of the match, but you string 3 or 4 of those together, and it starts becoming problem territory.
He forced Nihal to just lose a couple of moves with his queen as well, so costing time on the clock, costing time on the board, and White's queen improves. The White Knight might start relocating as well. The White Rooks could also find better posts. Nihal's lacking a plan here. Still very much a kind of stable, level-looking position due to the fact there are no pawn breaks, but Magnus surely happy with that scenario.
Here's my question. What's the White plan? Are we going for e4 in the medium to long term here?
It's always in the air, but first you want to improve every single piece of yours, right? And that's what Magnus does. He does double up on the C line. His queen, he might move it one step forward to place it on an active diagonal. Now Nihal offering some trades, so asking for some decisions here. The one thing you don't want to do is take knight takes knight. That would have ended up in a fork. Pawn takes knight, would have attacked the queen and the bishop. So Magnus simply retreats with the queen, now potentially threatening to recapture that knight with his own knight.
The plans will reveal themselves later. I think the first order of business for both sides is to try and put pieces on as active squares as possible. It's very difficult to kind of open lines. That is the problem. Here we see trying to close the center, Nihal Sarin. That makes sense. Blocking the center will favor the knights, but then again, Black has a very strong knight. How to improve the other one? Magnus now goes on the flank.
Well, he's going to be forced to improve the other one in a second.
क्या
A4
frame था
with
भाई?
A5 threaten. This is a route 1 strategy here, but a very, very real problem for Black to solve.
And it's one of Magnus's favorite moves, one of Magnus's favorite strategy in this position, especially when your opponent's knight is on the square, as was
Magnus
Nihal
का
Sarin.
heart
It
rate
sort of invites
70 है
the
भाई.
pawn to push forward and force it
बैठ के
to
TV
retreat.
देख रहा है जैसे
It
कि.
might not stop that. That pawn might
65.
go to a6 to create those weaknesses
The
that White was earlier trying to find. And I think it's so instructive. Whenever these two knights are either on b6 or g6, get those flank pawns moving to start targeting them.
Alfie the A-pawn marching forward. It's going to act as a battering ram, trying to open up the enemy king. It's always controversial because you do push a pawn in front of your own king as well, and NIHAL Serene has played such a risky move. It's given a double question mark. This could be the match ending. Magnus Carlsen, the position is so blocked. If he doesn't take that pawn, he might not get a second opportunity. NIHAL's taking a huge risk, and let's show what Magnus is now calculating. He'll invest a bit of time. We have time, therefore, to show on our analysis board, bishop takes pawn, taking advantage of the fact that pawn has moved forward, and the pawn recapturing would allow the white rooks into the game. This looks over. The black queen is hit. She's going to move forward with a check, but when the white king steps out of the way, the black king is left to its own devices. I don't really see any way to stem the tide here. We're going to see this play out on the board. There's a huge threat of rook takes pawn, and the black king might just be doomed. Let's go back and show. Magnus is going to show us what's about to happen. Checkmate incoming, potentially.
And he does fall back in that final position with his knight to defend it. Magnus on the attack. If he wins this, NIHAL Serene will be eliminated. His key will get crushed. The queen about to come into the attack. B3, B6, A7. That's game over. B7 checkmate. Thank you very much. I'm going to the semifinals is what Magnus is saying.
Look at NIHAL Serene. You can see the realization on his face suddenly. It's just knockout within a few moves. The only way to postpone this is to throw pieces away. You have to move the black knight out the way to bring the rooks across, but the black knight is trapped. NIHAL Serene, he looks devastated. This is his final moments in the Esports World Cup here in Riyadh.
It's the final few moves of it, and you can see it on him. You look at NIHAL, and that's all you need to know about the position. Queen B3, a square that he cannot fight for, a square that he can't stop, and that would be checkmate incoming. NIHAL Serene knows it's time to say goodbye to Riyadh.
He's coming to terms with his position now. Magnus still cool as a cucumber. He was looking a little bit more intense before making that move, and that's because he was busy calculating out, making sure that there's absolutely no rescue.
44 BPM.
Looking positively emotional now. The realization of what's happening is hitting him. Unfortunately, his life in the tournament is on the line, and there's nothing he can do now to stop this inevitable victory by the world #1.
This is heartbreaking. It's a quiet move, ultimately, that he'd missed. At the end of that variation, it was 3-4 move calculation to get to here, but he didn't realize that just pushing the rook forward and would end in this devastating checkmate. He might be resigning any moment now, NIHAL Serene, as the white queen coming forward. We'll draw the arrows again to show what's about to happen. This will end the game. The black queen cannot bring herself over to that flank in time. She's cut off from the action.
And it all came down to that one pawn move. And Magnus Carlsen, it barely took any time for him. NIHAL about to resign, and there it goes. Magnus Carlsen makes it to the semifinals.
Magnus Carlsen makes it to 2.5 points, and with 4 points on offer, he crosses the threshold needed to advance to the semifinals here at the Esports World Cup. A tense draw in game #1, followed by 2 decisive victories. Well fought by NIHAL Serene, but it's world #1, Magnus Carlsen, who advances.
A match in 3 for the world #1. He prevails as he usually does. The chess juggernaut, he rolls on, and these were the final few moments. A beautiful bishop sacrifice, the rook coming in, a small sidestep, only to be followed by a checkmate on NIHAL Serene in the next few moves. And for NIHAL, nothing was to be done but to resign. For Magnus Carlsen, he's in a flow state today. It's liquid Carlsen.
Very impressive from Magnus Carlsen. He had chances in game 1, didn't quite convert, but upped the level, went through the gears in games 2.
Oh, guys. With that, NIHAL Serene top 8 तो secure किया निहाल ने. NT for him. हाँ. एंटी कोई बात नहीं यार, कोई बात नहीं.
Magnus, we've had 4 of your games on this stage right here, and every single one of them has looked like you are just casually chilling, leaned way back in your chair. Can you explain your thought process through these and how they've had you feel?
No, I feel like the first couple of games today were really, really tense. The first, of course, I think he outcalculated me in the opening, and I was a pawn down, and I was kind of just hoping to survive and then maybe play on the clock. Then I got some winning chances that I couldn't convert. Second game, I felt like I was probably a little bit worse.
and I just felt that it was super tense. But then, he made one bad move, and after that, I don't feel like I gave him a lot of chances. In the last game, I felt pretty good. It's kind of it's a kind of position where which I like a lot, where you just have relatively simple play. It's and it's safe, and that went really nicely.
Now, regarding your next matchup, it is going to be up against Hikaru Nakamura, a rivalry that we all know. So talk to me about that going into your next matchup.
Of course, I didn't expect anything else. So, Hikaru's been a little bit shaky in a few matches, I think, but the best often prevail in pressure. So, expect a tough match, but hopefully I can sort of keep the same groove as I had in the last
Maybe
game.
Monster sponsored Magnus.
Should be in good shape.
Well,
Jersey,
ladies
I
and
mean
gentlemen,
liquid.
we have our 4 semi-finalists, and we're getting ready for the first one of the day here at the SNB Esports Arena.
कोई बात नहीं
Congratulations once
यार,
again,
मतलब
Magnus, for
obviously
making it to the next stage.
to compete against world number 1 टफ तो था, obviously टफ था बहुत ज़्यादा. But यार, निहाल did his best however he could. Top 8 तक आ गया निहाल. And this is the highest where SATL has been till now in Esports World Cup. ये चीज़ आप जान सकते हो. It's okay भाई, चलेगा. मतलब he tried. कोशिश तो किया, but it's okay. He definitely made us proud पे, मतलब उतना ऊपर तक जाना at Esports World Cup, LCQ खेल कर आया, and he went up till quarterfinals. Lower bracket भी खेल के, yes. He lost from the best, exactly. I mean, no better way to be very honest, no better way. किसी और से हारता तो बहुत ज्यादा कम होता है, यहाँ तो फिर भी चलो. बट यस, कोई बात नहीं यार. एक बार निहाल के लिए चैट में फुल ऑन रेड हार्ट स्पैम कर दीजिए. इट वॉज अ गुड ट्राई बाय हिम. यस, हिज जर्नी विल एंड एट EWC, बट आगे देखते हैं क्या होता है. गाइज, आप लोगों ने भी बहुत सपोर्ट दिखाया निहाल को एंड SATL को. रियली मीन्स अ लॉट. थैंक यू सो मच एवरीवन. एंड थैंक्स टू निहाल यार, हम लोग को 200 क्लब पॉइंट्स भी मिले हैं बिकॉज ऑफ निहाल. इट्स द फर्स्ट टाइम esports वर्ल्ड कप में हम लोग को अगर किसी ने क्लब पॉइंट्स दिलाया है वो निहाल ही है. एंटी निहाल मैग्नस से फाइट करने के लिए भी गूदा चाहिए, भी अच्छा खेला. या फर्स्ट मैच वाज गुड, दैट ड्रॉ वाज गुड. कोई नहीं यार. एंटी, हे निहाल.
Magnus is never easy, but what was the biggest challenge today when in your match?
Okay, of course I just got completely crushed today, but I mean I for sure could have played better. I think first maybe 1.5 game I was kind of matching him, or maybe even playing slightly better than him even in the first 1.5 games. But
You're known as a speed demon, but he actually was ahead on the clock. Did that play a factor at all today?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, I was trying to keep up with him on the clock as well, but okay, I mean, he's Magnus for a reason, so
And in that final game, I know when he's pushing his A pawn and you played A6, did you see the sack even before he played it? It's one of those ideas that maybe if you have a second chance, you would see it if you just take a little pause.
Yeah, I took a little pause actually. This A pawn push was very timely. I kind of overlooked that A4, knight c3, rook c3, and now queen on d1 protects A4 kind of. But yeah, then I realized only a bit late that the sack is very strong. That's why I took on c3, rook c3, and then played a6 because I thought now the sack should be okay because I can just take and go knight b8 to bring the rook. But no, I saw the sack, but I didn't see rook c7, and I cannot just do anything about queen b3, queen b7 mate. So.
Yeah, the quiet moves are sometimes the killer. You lost to perhaps the greatest player that's ever walked this planet, so don't be too ashamed of that. Your tournament ends, but we hope to see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. I'm just very happy to get a chance to play against Magnus. He's my biggest inspiration, and yeah, it's my first time getting to play him in a match. So
memories of a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure, and I wish him, not that he needs it, but I wish him good luck. And
EWC, making dreams come true.
A tough way for the journey to end, I'm sure, and you can feel the sting there in Nihal Sarin's words. But, I would say that he's gained a lot of fans by the showing that he put up in this tournament. A top 8 performance considering the field of players that entered here in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and he also qualified via the last chance qualifiers as well. He beat a lot of impressive players, and it was a great performance overall. But yeah, here comes the moment where dreams are crushed.
And we're going to have 2 dreams crushed here, because over on Stream B, it was Hikaru Nakamura who ended up taking down Levon Aronian, ending the dream July month there for the Armenian Lion. A key is crushed, a dream is crushed. Magnus Carlsen as well will now be stepping into the arena against Hikaru Nakamura as one of our semi-final bouts. On the flip side, we have Alireza Firouzja and Arjun Erigaisi, so 2 members of Team Falcons. We've got Team Liquid still in it, and Gen G, the representative, being Arjun Erigaisi. I think this is the marquee matchup, though, for so many people. These guys, number 1 and number 2 in the world for a reason. Hikaru, one of the fastest players on the planet, but even still, most everybody's going to be saying Magnus Carlsen is the man to beat.
And of the final 4 players, 3 of them are in our favorites, so we did a good job there. It was interesting when they asked Nihal, when Mike was like, hey, you lost, can you explain why you lost? He thought a while and he said, well, I was playing Magnus. So, that's when you know you're the greatest player who ever lived, when your opponent says they lost, not because they made bad moves, just because they were playing you.
Yeah, and it's crazy too, because he had kind of the same exact thinking or line of analysis that Magnus had of the way that the game's developed, and sometimes that's what happens. Magnus will find a way to make you crumble. Our semifinals are set though here in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. We'll be back in just a bit to help you break down all of those matchups. We're going to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're diving into the semis.
ओ भाई, मालूम है जब यहाँ पे मिला था तो अरविंद और निहाल इतना मैग्नस को प्रेस कर रहे थे ना, मतलब ट्रूली इन दोनों का इंस्पिरेशन है, विच इज़ ऑब्वियस. मतलब अभी इसने बोला भी निहाल ने, बट व्हेन वी हैड मेट, हम लोग 10 मिनट ऐसा लग रहा था मैग्नस के बारे में ही बात कर रहे थे कि हाउ गुड ही इज़, हाउ गुड हिज मेमोरी इज़. बहुत बहुत तगड़ा मेमोरी है मैग्नस कार्लसन का, वो लोग बोल रहे थे. टू गुड. और भी काफ़ी डेप्थ में उन्होंने बोला था कुछ चीज़ें. बट यार ठीक है यार, इट्स अ लर्निंग कर्व फॉर निहाल एज वेल. आई एम प्रिटी श्योर ही इज गोना बाउंस बैक और अच्छे से. इट्स ऑल राइट गाइज. मैग्नस के सामने खेलने ही अपने आप में एक लेजेंडरी मोमेंट है. मॉर्टल भाई, प्राउड ऑफ यू निहाल भाई फॉर गिविंग होल इंडियन फैमिली अ जॉयफुल मोमेंट. यस संस्कारी लड़का. ड्रॉ इज ऑल्सो लाइक अ विन अगेंस्ट हिम. कोई नहीं यार, इट्स ऑल राइट. बहुत ज़्यादा रूम फॉर इम्प्रूवमेंट है एंड ही नोज दैट. आई एम प्रिटी श्योर ही इज गोना ट्राई हिज लेवल बेस्ट. वेल गाइज, अभी एक काम करते हैं, मैं भी स्ट्रीम बंद करता हूँ एंड मेरा कल एक बहुत बड़ा शूट है, उसके लिए प्रिपेयर करता हूँ. आप लोग इफ़ सिड भाई स्ट्रीमिंग, आप उनके स्ट्रीम पर जा सकते हो, या फिर आप ऑब्वियसली ये चेस का जो टूर्नामेंट EWC के चैनल पर चल रहा है वहाँ पर जा सकते हो. मेरा तो मूड एकदम नहीं है इसके आगे स्ट्रीम देखने का. आई नो बहुत ज़्यादा, हाँ अंकिता इज़ ऑल्सो स्ट्रीमिंग, आई नो बहुत ज़्यादा क्या बोलते हैं एक्सपेक्टेशंस, ओवर ऑप्टिमिस्टिक नहीं था इसमें मैं. येस अ लिटिल आई वॉज कॉन्फिडेंट दैट निहाल वुड गिव हिम टक्कर, बट इट्स ऑल राइट यार, चलेगा. As he said, he got crushed under pressure of playing against the best player in the world, against his inspiration. But I guess it's a learning curve for him as well. HF स्ट्रीम करेगा, हेड फ्लिकर के चैनल पे जाओ, वहाँ पे आपको वो बहुत ज़्यादा नॉलेज भी देगा. ऑल्सो कल PMWC का वॉच पार्टी डे 1 का मैं नहीं करने वाला हूँ गाइज, बिकॉज टुमारो इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर मी. वो जो शूट होने वाला है वो उस आई हैव टू बी अ पार्ट ऑफ इट. सो whoever is concerned, कल नहीं करूँगा मैं वॉच पार्टी, परसों और नरसों दोनों दिन करूँगा. दैट्स द प्लान. ओके बट गाइज सब जगह निहाल को प्यार बांटना, स्पेशली इन द कमेंट्स. ठीक है, कमेंट्स में प्यार बांटना उसको. ही ट्राइड इज लेवल बेस्ट. ओके चलो टेक केयर, मिलते हैं आपको परसों के स्ट्रीम पर. कल शूट का व्लॉग होने वाला है BTS, ऑलरेडी वो चालू हो चुका है उसका BTS शूट, बाकी सारा भी कर लेंगे. बाय बाय.